Chapter 1061. Rumble in the Spatial Storm. Yi Chen's body shone with intense light. At that moment, he was carrying his daughter with one hand and looking at the endless cracks around him with a serious expression. It's been half a day since I was sucked into the spatial countercurrent. I haven't stopped during this period of time. If it was on flat ground, I'm afraid I would have traveled hundreds of thousands of kilometers, Yi Chen mumbled to himself. Although he could rely on his physical strength to protect himself from the violent countercurrent, it was not a solution in the long run. After all, he still had to use his true origin energy to protect the little girl in his arms. Once his true origin energy was exhausted, even he would have a headache. During this period of time, he had taken out medicinal pills to recover his true origin energy more than once, but there was a limit to the medicinal pills. My true origin energy can only last for an hour. Yi Chen's expression could not help but turn grim as he sensed the lack of energy coming from his dantian. At that moment, a dragon-like roar came from the spatial turbulence in front of him. It swept at Yi Chen from all directions. On the other hand, the latter was delighted. There's light. It seems like there's an exit in this turbulence. His eyesight was excellent. Through the turbulence, he saw a resplendent light in the endless darkness in the distance. Without any hesitation, he activated his remaining true origin energy with all his might and charged towards the resplendent light in the distance. I'm close, less than 3,000 meters away. Another 5,000 meters, 300 meters, boom! Yi Chen ignored all the turbulence that was coming at him. In the end, he smashed heavily onto the light. It was as if he had ignited a barrel of explosives, causing the turbulence behind him to collapse completely. The ancient desolate realm was sealed in ice. The 1,000-meter-tall, snow-capped mountain seemed to have been chopped by a knife and an axe. It was abnormally steep. On this day, a golden light flashed through the sky at an extremely fast speed. The golden light was like a rainbow as it crashed into the snow-capped mountain like a hot knife through butter. Boom, boom, a 1,000-meter-tall, snow-capped mountain cracked in the middle. Then, an earth-shattering avalanche occurred, rolling down like a huge torrent. After the avalanche stopped, a timid voice rang out from the world of ice and snow. "Daddy, are you all right?" Swoosh, as a golden light soared into the sky from the pile of snow. It landed on a relatively flat ground. Finally, a thin figure was revealed. It was Yi Chen who was carrying his daughter. The former dusted off the snow on his body and looked around. He then smiled and said, "What a strong spiritual energy. It's even stronger than the spiritual energy on Earth. Daddy, I'm a little cold." The little guy in his arms shrank his neck and said with a cold breath, "Eat a fire elemental pill." Yi Chen chuckled softly. He wanted to open his storage ring by instinct, but he realized that the spiritual energy in his body was completely depleted. The little fellow widened her black eyes and looked expectantly at his empty right hand. "Daddy, where's the fire yuan pill?" "Daddy's Jin Yuan is used up, so I can't open the storage ring. Wait until Daddy recovers his Jin Yuan. Then I'll give it to you, okay?" Yi Chen changed his posture and hugged her. He rubbed her cold little hand softly. "If you're cold, you can put your hands under my clothes." "No, if that's the case, Daddy will be cold too. Daddy will catch a cold." The little guy hurriedly shook his head. Yi Chen could not help but laugh when he heard that. "It's all right. Daddy will bring you away from here. It won't be cold when we go to a place with the sun." After saying that, he began to look around. What he saw was a boundless snowy peak. Even so, the air was still filled with spiritual energy. The presence of spiritual energy means that there are spirit herbs here. If I pick the spirit herbs and consume them, I might be able to recover some of my Jin Yuan. Yi Chen secretly nodded and said while frowning, "I wonder if this is the ancient desolate realm? Also, did Wu Shuang and the rest land in this realm?" With that, he carried the little girl and took a step forward. Even though he had lost his Jin Yuan, his strength did not decline by much. The mere snow mountain before him was nothing to him. After running for dozens of kilometers, Yi Chen still did not see any signs of life. Just when he was about to retract his divine consciousness, his eyes could not help but light up. There's someone ahead. His current divine consciousness could cover a radius of 5 kilometers, so he could vaguely sense that there seemed to be fighting sounds 5 kilometers away. On the north side of the ice field, more than 10 people were being besieged. The ones besieging them were demon wolves that were 30 meters tall. Each of these demon wolves was a martial venerable, and the leading demon wolf had even reached the pseudo-emperor stage. The most terrifying thing was that they could spit out ice blades from their mouths. They could even burrow into the ice, catching people off guard. 9 of the people besieged were wearing armor, and all of them were martial venerables. The 9 of them held shields and formed a battle formation, protecting the 2 women tightly. Group leader, you go first. We'll cover the rear. A tall man glanced at the pack of wolves that surrounded them, and his face turned ashen. There were at least 40 to 50 wolves in front of them. Normally, the 9 of them would be able to escape unscathed. However, they had to protect the purple-clothed woman in the middle now. As a result, their energy was divided. That's right, Your Highness. Let's go first. A red-clothed girl in the crowd grabbed the shoulder of a purple-clothed woman nervously. The former's face was extremely pale. Anlu City is 50 kilometers away. As long as we escape back to Anlu City, these beasts won't be able to do anything to us. No, I'm not leaving. The purple-clothed girl tightly gripped a jade box in her hand, bit her lips, and said, Uncle Wu, in order to help me pick the ice jade mist lotus, 3 people have already died. Now that I've finally picked it, if we're leaving, we'll leave together. The woman was only 18 or 19 years old, but her tone was extremely determined when she said that. As soon as she finished speaking, the 9 lives guards around her were extremely touched. Roar! Suddenly, a white demon wolf in the pack roared and stomped its feet on the ground. It soared into the sky and pounced at the crowd like a falling mountain. Boom! Boom! Ice blades tore through the air. Retreat! The 9 of them spoke in unison. They raised their shields high and blocked the countless ice blades. However, they were also sent flying, causing the formation to collapse completely. The 2 women in the middle were completely exposed to the wolves. Roar! The wolves and surroundings immediately swarmed over. Seeing this scene, the purple-clothed woman suddenly stuffed the jade box in her hand into the red-clothed girl's hand and gave her a fierce push. Shwet, return alive. You must give the ice jade mist lotus to my father. Your Highness, don't, the red-clothed girl cried bitterly as she was pushed away. She could only watch helplessly as the wolves pounced over and covered the purple-clothed woman. Boom! At this moment, a snowball suddenly rolled over from afar. The snowball became bigger and bigger as it rolled, directly rolling into the wolf pack. Wherever the snowball passed, the wolves were smashed into pieces and blood splattered everywhere. The red-clothed girl and the purple-clothed woman were stunned. The 9 knights who had already lost all hope were also stunned. In the next moment, they heard the sound of something tearing through the air. Then, a skinny young man walked over with a little girl in his arms. Those who like Evildoer Nanny in the city, please collect. Evildoer Nanny in the city's mobile game bar updates the fastest. Chapter 1062. The young man had a head of white hair, and his facial features were as handsome as a god's. His eyes were as deep as the galaxy, making it impossible to see the bottom. Roar! The remaining snow-white demon wolf roared and attacked Yichun when it saw so many of its clansmen die. You're courting death. Yichun scoffed coldly and did not move. He threw a light punch when the giant demon wolf pounced at him. The punch directly pierced through the latter's body. The latter let out an unwilling roar before exploding into a pool of blood mist. Pseudo-Emperor stage? When everyone saw this, their pupils constricted, including the purple-clothed girl. To be able to kill a pseudo-Emperor stage demon wolf with a single punch, other than being at the pseudo-Emperor stage or a pseudo-Emperor stage. How could he do it so cleanly? A few seconds later, the purple-clothed girl snapped back to her senses. She walked forward quickly and said to Yichun from afar while cupping her fists, Greetings, Senior. Thank you for saving us this time. The Langia Palace will definitely reward you handsomely after this." As soon as she finished speaking, the red-clothed girl and the 9 guards beside her stepped forward to thank her. Only one of them, with a curly beard, had a hint of vigilance flashing through his eyes. Yi-chun did not expose him after seeing his reaction. Instead, he looked at the purple-clothed girl and said, "I've been cultivating in the mountains for a long time and accidentally ended up here. May I know where this place is?" His tone was extremely cold, giving off an unquestionable feeling. Lu Fei was stunned at first. Then she hurriedly said, "Senior Yi, this is the Lost Ice Plains, a great moat in the territory of our Daezong dynasty." Daezong dynasty? Yi-chun secretly frowned. It was the first time he had heard of this place. For a moment, he was not sure if he had arrived at the ancient desolate realm. Thinking to this point, he could not help but ask, how far is this place from the Tianfeng Sea area? He still remembered that the last time he came to the ancient desolate realm, he had descended into the Tianfeng Sea area. Therefore, he had gotten to know the people from the Qingmu fort and formed quite a few ties. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone revealed surprised expressions. Clearly, they did not expect him to ask this question. A few seconds later, Lu Fei cleared her throat and said, "Senior, you're not from the north, right?" "That's right." Yi-chun took in everyone's expressions and admitted it openly. Lu Fei revealed an expression of as expected. She smiled and said, "Senior, the Heaven Wind Sea area you're asking about is not within the northern region. It's at the border between the southern territory and the western desert." Yi-chun nodded calmly when he heard that. The boulder in his heart was completely relieved. Since Lu Fei knew about the Tianfeng Sea region, this meant that he had truly descended into the ancient barren world. He hadn't been swept to another world by the reversal of space. "Senior, since this is the first time you've come to the northern region, there must be many things that you don't understand." Lu Fei said again, "Why don't you come with me? I'll tell you everything I know." One of the 9 guards subconsciously said, "Group leader, this person's identity is unknown." Before he could finish, he was stopped by Lu Fei's cough. Only then did he realize that the person standing in front of them was a pseudo-emperor stage powerhouse. "That's good too." Yi-chun nodded after thinking about it. Although he had been to the ancient barren world once, he did not know much about it. Moreover, he wanted to find out the whereabouts of Wu Shuang, the patriarch of hell, and the rest. Subsequently, Lu Fei and the rest tidied up and put away the demon wolf beast cores on the ground. They led Yi-chun away from the lost ice field. Along the way, Yi-chun found out that the ancient barren world was divided into 5 regions: the eastern barren territory, the southern region, the northern region, the western desert, and the central state. These 5 regions were vast, easily hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. Ordinary people would not be able to travel there in their entire lives. Even for cultivators, it would take them several years to cross over. Therefore, the 5 regions were all connected by teleportation arrays. As for the Heaven Wind Sea area, it was an independent zone between the southern region and the northern region. In the northern region, there were many dynasties and countless sections. The Grand Dynasty was a super force in the northern region, ruling over dozens of dynasties of various sizes. Meanwhile, Lu Fei's father was the Duke of Langia, who was appointed by the Grand Dynasty. He had a trace of the royal family's bloodline. He ruled over the Langia County, which covered tens of thousands of kilometers. Lu Fei and the rest came to the Lost Ice Field to look for the Ice Jade Lotus. It was said that Lu Fei's father, the Duke of Langia, had a problem with his cultivation. Only the Ice Jade Lotus could cure the side effects. They had hidden it from their families and came out to look for it secretly. They did not expect to provoke the demon wolves, and 3 guards had died because of it. Meanwhile, the man who rejected Yi-chun earlier was called Wu Lai. He was the captain of the guards of the Langia Palace and had served in the army. During that period, Lu Fei had been testing Yi-chun's background and identity. However, with less than 20 years of life experience, she seemed very immature before Yi-chun. She was able to solve all of it. On the other hand, the red-clad girl called Shui kept staring at Yi-chun. Her gaze would occasionally fall on Yi-chun's hair and Meng Meng, who was in his embrace. The little girl mumbled while eating the spirit fruit that Lu Fei gave her, "Sister, why are you looking at my daddy like that?" Don't tell me that you like my daddy. I like your daddy. Shwe was stunned at first, then she snickered. She said while blushing, I'm wondering why your daddy's hair is all white at such a young age. That's his style, sister. You don't understand. The little girl was like a machine gun, talking nonstop. Even Lu Fei was interested. Fanner, what style? The little girl was rather impatient. Style is style. Just when they were talking and laughing, Wu Lai suddenly said, Are you a body cultivator, senior? As soon as that was said, Lu Fei and the rest looked at Yi Chun at the same time. There was an unspoken meaning in their eyes. They faintly recalled that when Yi Chun killed the wolves, there was no true energy fluctuation on him at all. Since he did not cultivate qi, he must have cultivated his body. Yi Chun nodded lightly and said, You can say that. His true origin energy and supernatural power were almost gone now, so he could only fight with his physical strength. Therefore, it was not an exaggeration to describe him as a body cultivator. As his voice fell, there was a hint of disdain in Wu Lai's eyes as he looked at him. Even the others were no longer as respectful as before. Even Lu Fei's eyes flashed with a hint of pity. The so-called body cultivators were unable to step onto the path of qi cultivation because their meridians were blocked. They could only find another way to improve themselves by tempering their bodies and exhausting their potential. This kind of method was considered unorthodox in the orthodox path of cultivation. After all, the potential of the human body was limited, and it was equivalent to overdrafting one's life in advance. Yi Chun secretly frowned at the sudden change in everyone's attitude. Just when he was about to ask what was wrong, suddenly, the roars of demonic beasts rang out from afar. Then, the entire ground began to rumble and shake, as if thousands of soldiers and horses were galloping. Wu Lai was overjoyed. Miss, it's the stalwart tiger camp. The stalwart tiger camp under His Highness has come to receive us. Evildoer Nanny Dad in the city, please collect. Evildoer Nanny Dad in the city's mobile game bar updates the fastest. Chapter 1063. Rumble. The solid ground was shaking violently, and sand and dust were rising into the sky at the end of the ground. At the next moment, black shadows rushed over like a torrent of steel. They carried a monstrous, murderous aura that made one's expression change. Yi Chun lifted his head and looked over. What he saw was an army of hundreds of people. Every one of them was a burly man in heavy armor, with only his eyes left. Beneath his crotch were many ferocious tigers with black stripes all over their bodies. Each of the tigers was at the Zhongshe realm. As expected of the ancient desolate realm, Yi Chun nodded secretly. If this combat power was on Earth before the spiritual energy recovery, it would be enough to sweep through any country. Whoosh! The hundreds of cavalry suddenly stopped when they were less than 30 meters away from the crowd and remained motionless. Tap, tap, tap. Then a tall, dark-faced man at the front quickly walked forward and knelt on one knee. General Peng Hai greets Your Highness. We're late. Please punish us. Lu Fei's expression was cold. I only went out on my own this time. General Peng did not know about it. What's the crime? Please rise. Only then did Peng Hai stand up and look straight at Wu Lai. Captain Wu, you brought the princess into danger without permission. When you return, you will receive 100 lashes. The rest of you will receive 50 lashes each. Yes, sir. Wu Lai and the rest smiled bitterly and answered in unison. Although they were cultivators, the military staff was also a magic tool. After 100 lashes, even if they did not die, they would lose a layer of skin. Lu Fei's beautiful eyes turned cold. General Peng, I told you that this happened because of me. If you want to punish me, won't you punish me too? Princess, I wouldn't dare. Peng Hai immediately cupped his fists. As soldiers, it's our duty to obey military orders. I hope you won't make things difficult for me. Yi Chun watched that quietly, and a smile gradually appeared at the corner of his lips. With his experience, how could he not tell that General Peng was purposely trying to intimidate Lu Fei? The former was just a general of the Brave Tiger Battalion. He was only a rank 7 official with less than 500 men, yet he dared to treat the princess like that. That meant that there was someone backing him up. If that was the case, then the vast Langya County was not as united as outsiders thought. Sure enough, Lu Fei quietly stared at Peng Hai for a few seconds before taking a deep breath. After returning, I will look for my father. Don't worry, princess. Peng Hai smiled lightly. Only then did he notice Yi Chun, who was standing aside. His expression turned grim immediately. Princess, this person looks unfamiliar. Could he be the thief that you guys captured? Men, hurry up and capture him. With that, he suddenly waved his hand. Here. A few people behind him responded in unison. Then, they walked toward Yi Chun with heavy footsteps. Wait. Lu Fei took a step forward and stood in front of Yi Chun. She looked straight at Peng Hai and said, General Peng, Senior Yi is my savior. How dare you touch him? Savior? Peng Hai looked at Yi Chun carefully again and smiled disdainfully. This brat doesn't have any aura on him. What makes him think that he can save the princess? At this point, he continued. Moreover, even if this person saved the princess, his identity is still unknown, and he must be investigated. Is that so? Lu Fei smirked coldly. General Peng, what if I tell you that Senior Yi is a pseudo-emperor stage almighty? Peng Hai's expression changed when he heard that. Even the few soldiers who were planning to capture Yi Chun stopped in their tracks. A pseudo-emperor stage almighty? Peng Hai stared at Yi Chun as his expression changed. Then, he looked at Wu Lai beside him. Is this true? A pseudo-emperor stage almighty. Lu Fei was right. If Yi Chun was really a pseudo-emperor stage almighty, he really could not act recklessly. After all, he was only a peak martial venerable. He was still one step away from becoming a pseudo-emperor. This step seemed weak, but it was a world of difference. Meeting his gaze, Wu Lai nodded and said, That's right, he's indeed a pseudo-emperor stage almighty, but Peng Hai's heart sank. Then, he realized that there was a hidden meaning in his words. His gaze turned cold, but what? Lu Fei hurriedly looked over. But he's a body cultivator. Wu Lai ignored Lu Fei's gaze and braced himself. As soon as he finished speaking, Peng Hai's tense face relaxed completely. He laughed out loud and said, So it's Senior Yi. Sorry for my rudeness. If I offended you earlier, please don't hold it against me. Yi Chun ignored him directly. How could he not tell that Yi Chun was talking to him in a mocking tone? However, what puzzled him was why Lu Fei and the rest's attitude changed drastically after hearing that he was a body cultivator, especially Wu Lai. General Peng, can we enter the city now? Lu Fei's expression was cold as she suppressed her anger. Yes, please enter, princess. Peng Hai hurriedly waved his hand and dismissed the people behind him. Move aside and let the princess enter the city. Walala. As the crowd dispersed, a spacious path was created. Lu Fei turned around and looked at Yi Chun. Senior Yi, let's go in. Yi Chun nodded and followed her. Peng Hai stood where he was with his men. He squinted and sent Yi Chun and the rest into the city. At that moment, a man stepped forward and said, General, why didn't you take the opportunity to take that brat down earlier? Even though he's a pseudo-emperor, as long as he dares to resist, we can send a message to General Xie. That's right. There's an additional pseudo-emperor in the princess's faction. I'm afraid something unexpected will happen. Another person said. Peng Hai could not help but smirk coldly when he heard that. It's true that he's a pseudo-emperor, but he's a body cultivator. A body cultivator can't become an emperor. This is a curse and also fate. He paused for a moment and said, Moreover, that brat has the princess protection. Are we really going to offend him? Just you wait. His eyes flickered. That old thing, Lu Qingzhou, doesn't have long to live. Once he's dead, we can kill whoever we want. Anlu City was a city under the jurisdiction of Langya County. It was incomparably magnificent. As far as the eye could see, both ends of the street were filled with endless shops. Senior Yi, I've embarrassed myself. Lu Fei rode on a horse and stood side by side with Yi Chun's horse. There was an apologetic look on her pretty face. Don't worry about it. Yi Chun shook his head nonchalantly and asked, There's something I don't understand. Why did you guys react so strongly when you heard that I'm a body cultivator? Lu Fei did not answer his question and said, Don't worry, Mr. Yi. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to describe you as a one-in-a-million genius to be able to reach such a level through body cultivation at such a young age. Before she could finish speaking, Yi-chan suddenly stretched his hand out and placed it on her shoulder. Then, he pulled her hard. Boom! At the same time, several intense killing intent suddenly shot out from the shops on both sides of the street, targeting Lu Fei. Demon Nanny in the city's latest chapter. Demon Nanny in the city's full text reading address. /122695/Demon Nanny in the city's TXT download address. Demon Nanny in the city's mobile reading address. /122695/ To make it easier for you to read it next time, you can click favorite below to record this time. The killing intent from within the city. You can see it the next time you open the bookshelf. If you like Demon Nanny in the City, please recommend this book to your friends, QQ, blog, WeChat, etc. Thank you for your support. Chapter 1064. Lu Fei suddenly felt Yi Chen's hand on her shoulder. Then, she was pulled into Yi Chen's embrace. At that moment, she was embarrassed and furious. She thought that Yi Chen wanted to take advantage of her. Just as she was about to struggle, she suddenly sensed several killing intents from both sides of the street. The killing intent caused her entire body to tremble, and all the hairs on her body stood on end. Boom! In the blink of an eye, several black shadows rushed into the sky from both sides. The cultivation base that erupted almost swept through heaven and earth. Assassins. At that moment, Wu Lai's expression changed. Protect His Highness! Protect His Highness! Bang, bang, bang. The remaining 8 guards drew their swords almost instinctively, and all sorts of attacks landed on the few people in the air. Clang, clang, clang. However, what shocked them was that after they slashed with their swords, other than setting off a dazzling flame, they could not cause any damage at all. Scram! Wu Lai pushed one person back with a slash. Then he saw all sorts of strange talismans through that person's torn clothes. He seemed to have thought of something, and his expression changed. Oh no! Corpse Immortal Sect! It's Corpse Immortal Sect! As soon as he said that, the rest of them revealed expressions of shock. Deep fear surged in their eyes. What? It's actually the Corpse Immortal Sect. Lu Fei, who was in Yi Chen's embrace, shuddered when she heard that, as if she had heard something terrifying. Yi Chen squinted his eyes and looked at the black shadows that were fighting with Wu Lai and the rest. He secretly frowned. Corpse energy? Corpse refinement? That's right, Lu Fei said with a pale face. Senior Yi, the Corpse Immortal Sect is an evil sect in our dynasty. They specialize in capturing people and using all sorts of venom to refine them into invulnerable, poisonous corpses. Ah! While she was speaking, Wu Lai and the other 8 guards screamed in succession. Withered hands suddenly pierced through their chests, and countless amounts of blood sprayed out. Seeing that, Lu Fei could not help but say anxiously, Senior Yi, please save Uncle Wu and the rest. It was fine if she was not anxious. Once she was anxious, she could not help but shake her body, causing Yi Chen, who was in close contact with her, to look slightly uncomfortable. Right at that moment, Wu Lai let out a blood-curdling scream as his entire arm was pierced through by a poisonous corpse. Without saying a word, he cut off his own arm and roared, Princess, go! Go quickly! Senior Yi! Lu Fei was about to cry. Yi Chen sighed softly. Just when he was going to attack, he suddenly looked at the end of the street. Boom, boom, boom! Suddenly, several rays of sword light shot through the air. These rays of sword light tore through the air and rapidly pierced through the poisoned corpses. Bang, bang, bang. The poisoned corpses exploded in an instant. Seeing this sword light, Lu Fei, who had already given up all hope, was instantly overjoyed. She raised her head and said, Elder Hong. As her voice fell, at the end of the street, several figures flew over. The person in the lead was an old man in a brocade robe. The old man carried a sword sheath, and his eyebrows were filled with sharpness. Pseudo-Emperor, a strange gleam flashed through Yi Chen's eyes. The old man in the brocade robe looked at Lu Fei after he got closer. Your Highness, I'm late. Sorry for scaring you. A ferocious gleam flashed through his eyes when he noticed that Lu Fei was almost in Yi Chen's embrace. Fei Fei. At that moment, a young man in luxurious clothes walked out from behind him. The young man was only 24-25 years old, and he was very handsome. The young man walked over excitedly and asked subconsciously, Fei Fei, are you all right? Lu Fei said as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders, Hong Fei, I'm fine. It's good that you're fine. Hong Fei nodded repeatedly. His expression turned grim when he noticed the ambiguous posture between her and Yi Chen. Fei Fei, who is he? As he said that, he took a step forward and extended his hand to grab Yi Chen. Brat, how dare you be rude to Fei Fei? Do you know who she is? His attack was extremely ruthless. His target was Yi Chen's throat as killing intent flashed through his eyes. Yi Chen's eyes turned cold. He had saved Lu Fei out of instinct earlier. He had no intention of molesting her. However, the young man in front of him didn't distinguish right from wrong and attacked him ruthlessly, so he didn't mind killing in all directions. Stop. At that moment, Lu Fei suddenly stopped Hong Fei and said, Hong Fei, you've misunderstood. Senior Yi was trying to save me. At this point, a blush flashed across her exquisite face. Senior Yi, see, can you let me go? Earlier, she had also thought of Yi Chen as a lecherous wastrel. However, when the poisoned men charged in, she came to a realization. Hong Fei was even more displeased when he saw her shy attitude. He did not hide the burning jealousy in his eyes when he looked at Yi Chen. Yi Chen nodded lightly and put his hand on her shoulder. He placed her on the ground steadily. The old man in brocade robe took a good look at Yi Chen and said, Your Highness, may I know who this is? Elder Hong, Senior Yi, is my savior. We were waiting in the Lost Ice Plains earlier. Lu Fei told him what happened slowly and introduced him to Yi Chen. Senior Yi, this is Elder Hong Tai Sui of the Bright Sword Pavilion. This is Elder Hong's son, Hong Fei. Yi Chen finally understood that the Bright Sword Pavilion was a sword cultivation sect in the Great Dynasty. Furthermore, it was in Langya County. King Langya Lu Qingzhou had always been courteous, so he naturally respected the Bright Sword Pavilion greatly. Eventually, the Langya King's mansion would ask the Bright Sword Pavilion for help if there was anything. So, its fellow Yi, Hong Tai Sui, clasped his fists at Yi Chen politely, but there was no enthusiasm on his face. Thank you for escorting me along the way, fellow Yi. I'll escort the princess back to the residence in the future. There's no need for you to worry. It was clear that he wanted to chase Yi Chen away. Yi Chen was unmoved. How could he, mad southern Yi, stay or leave at the mercy of a single person? Lu Fei was his best candidate to figure out the situation in the north, so naturally, he would not leave easily. Death seemed to have sensed his intentions, and the smile on Hong Tai Sui's face gradually froze. However, Hong Fei, who was at the side, did not have any qualms. He said coldly, Brat, don't you understand? Fei Fei doesn't need your protection anymore. Why aren't you leaving? Hong Fei, Elder Hong, Senior Yi is my savior, and he's new here. He's unfamiliar with this place. Lu Fei could not help but say, I promise to bring him back to the residence. At the very least, one must have integrity. Fei Fei, Hong Fei hesitated. Forget it. Chapter 1065. Yi Chen followed the convoy north and arrived at Langya County half a day later. Through his conversation with Lu Fei and the maidservant, Shui, he gained a better understanding of the dynasties in Langya County. The territories of the dynasties spanned hundreds of thousands of kilometers. There were 5 states and 20 counties within the territory, and each county governed dozens of cities. Langya County was one of the 5 states and 12 counties of the Great Zhou dynasty. It was said that when the Great Zhou dynasty was founded, the founding emperor had given the 13th prince, Lu Qingzhou, a fief. As the name of the fief was Langya County, after the 13th prince, Lu Qingzhou, established his residence, the imperial court granted him the title of King Langya. Although Langya County was only a county, its wealth was one of the best among the 20 counties. Coupled with its vast land and abundant resources, it produced beauties and iron mines. All the weapons in the world came from here. It could be said to be a rich land. However, such a fief had fallen into the hands of King Langia. From this, it could be seen how much trust the imperial court had in King Langia. The Langia Palace was located in the east of Langia County. The mansion covered an area of thousands of acres. There were many pavilions and countless gardens in the mansion. If ordinary people entered, they would get lost and could not get out. Lu Fei turned around and said to Yi Chun after the carriage stopped outside the Langia Palace, "Senior Yi, I have to see my father. I'll get Schwerer to arrange for you and your daughter to stay in my palace. I'll come and listen to your guidance later. Don't worry about it." Yi Chun shook his head lightly. He then entered the palace under Schwerer's lead. He was arranged to stay in an exceptionally magnificent courtyard. After watching him leave, Hong Fei said coldly, "Fei Fei, your Langia Palace is in a special period now, and this person's background is unknown. Why do you still? Let's go see father first." Lu Fei left after saying that. Hong Fei could not help but look at Hong Tai Sui and snorted, "Father, can you chase that brat out?" "Nonsense." Hong Tai Sui's expression turned grim. "This is the palace, not the sect. Moreover, His Highness can't tolerate anything." At the Langia Palace, in the observation platform, Meng Meng stood by the lake and pointed at the lake excitedly. "Daddy, fishy look, what a beautiful fishy." Yi Chun smiled and allowed the little girl to fool around. He lifted his eyes to look at the luxurious facilities around him and could not help but nod secretly. He could tell that Lu Fei had put in a lot of effort. Cher summoned a few maidservants and prepared a bed for Yi Chun in an extremely considerate manner. She said with a smile, "Senior Yi, the bed is ready. If you need anything, just let us know." Yi Chun had a strange expression on his face when he heard that. No matter how he listened to it, it sounded ambiguous. Sure, it was stunned at first when she saw his expression. Then, she realized what he meant and blushed. "Senior Yi, I didn't mean it that way. It's fine. You can leave now." Yi Chun shook his head in between tears and laughter. "Bring everyone out. I don't like being served." Schwerer was slightly taken aback, but she didn't ask any questions. She walked over and gave a few instructions before leaving with the maidservants in tow. Yi Chun looked at his daughter playing in the water far away and mumbled, "The most important thing now is to figure out the situation in the north. Secondly, I'll try to find out the whereabouts of Yuhan and my parents, as well as Wu Shuang and the Patriarch." The ancient barren world was bigger than he had imagined. Just the dynasty in the north had a territory of hundreds of thousands of kilometers, let alone the other 4 regions. In the vast sea of people, it would be like searching for a needle in a haystack if you wanted to find Su Yuhan and the rest quickly. Unless I could develop some energy and use them to achieve twice the result with half the effort. Yi Chun's eyes flickered as he thought to this point. The Langia Palace is a suitable target. Lu Fei is also a good breakthrough. Almost at that moment, in a palace in the Langia Palace, smoke curled up and security was tight. Langia Palace. In the solemn hall, Lu Fei took a few steps forward and knelt down respectfully. "Greetings, father. I made you worry about me." "Fei, please get up." Then, a weak and oppressive voice rang out. Then, a middle-aged man in an embroidered robe walked down from the hall with the help of someone to help Lu Fei up. The middle-aged man was very handsome and extraordinary. His brows were filled with sharpness, but his face was slightly pale. He saw this person, Hong Tai Sui and the rest, who were behind the hall, were shocked. It was because this person was the 13th uncle of the current emperor of the Great Zhou dynasty. He was also the true owner of the Langia Palace, King Langia, Lu Qingzhou. King Langia helped Lu Fei up gently and looked at her dotingly. Then he sighed softly, "Fei, you've worked hard. Fortunately, your trip was more daunting than dangerous." Seeing that her father did not blame her, Lu Fei felt a lump in her throat. She took the initiative to support the former. "I didn't listen to you," and sneaked out. "I made you worry. It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back." King Langia smiled lightly. With Lu Fei's help, he walked to the throne on the high platform in the hall. Then, he looked at Hong Tai Sui and the rest. "It's all thanks to Elder Hong that my daughter was able to escape from the lost glacier this time. I thank you." As soon as that was said, Hong Tai Sui and the rest felt their faces heat up. Even though they wanted to accept King Langyu's favor, they still had to save face. After King Langya saw everyone's expressions, he frowned and said, "Could it be that there was an accident along the way?" In the end, Lu Fei could not help but say, "Father, the reason why I was able to escape from the Lost Glacier this time is all because of one person. It's not Elder Hong and the rest." King Langya was stunned at first. Then, he figured out the problem and could not help but smile. "Then who saved Fei? I must thank him properly." "Father, it was a Senior Yi who saved me." Lu Fei told her father everything that had happened in the ice plain. After hearing that, Hong Tai Sui and the rest revealed surprised expressions, especially Hong Fei. His face was filled with disbelief. He killed a pseudo-Emperor Stage Wolf King with one hand. Even Hong Tai Sui, who was also a pseudo-Emperor Stage powerhouse, felt that he could not achieve such combat strength. Hong Tai Sui's expression changed a few times before he said slowly, "May I ask, Princess, this fellow doesn't have any true energy fluctuations on him, but he was able to kill the Wolf King with one hand. Could it be that this person is—" "That's right, Senior Yi is a body cultivator." Although Lu Fei was unwilling to reveal it, she still hesitated in front of everyone, but before she could finish, Hong Fei was the first to laugh out loud. "I was wondering why he was so powerful. So he's just a piece of trash." Even Hong Tai Sui and the rest had disdainful expressions. Lu Fei was a little unhappy. "Father, it's fine." King Langya shook his head slightly and said, "Regardless of whether this Mr. Yi is a body cultivator or a chi cultivator, he's my daughter's savior. I should thank him personally." Chapter 1066. As King Langya's voice fell, everyone, including Lu Fei and Hong Tai Sui, turned pale at the same time. After all, who was King Langya? Although he was only a duke and not a prince, he was no different from an overlord in Langya County. Most importantly, after King Langya encountered a problem in his cultivation, he refused to see anyone and refused to see anyone. But now he was going to meet an outsider in person. From this, it could be seen how much he loved Lu Fei. "Your Highness, although that brat is a pseudo-Emperor Stage powerhouse, he is not a pseudo-Emperor Stage powerhouse." Hong Fei couldn't help but say, "But in the end, he's still a physique cultivator. Why do you have to lower yourself to deal with this kind of trash?" King Langya merely glanced at him. Just this glance caused the latter to forcefully shut his mouth and not dare to speak another word. In the viewing platform, Yi Chun sat with his legs crossed. He closed his eyes lightly and did not move at all. If one looked carefully, they would find that the heaven and earth spiritual chi in the viewing platform was gathering at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the end, it turned into streams of dragon-shaped chi that entered his nose and was completely refined by him. A few seconds later, Yi Chun opened his eyes slowly and secretly shook his head. This spiritual energy is still not enough. On his way to the ancient barren world, he encountered a space turbulence. In order to protect his daughter, he used up all his spiritual energy. He couldn't even open his storage ring. Initially, he wanted to absorb the spiritual energy in the wave viewing platform and refine it into Jinchi. Even if he could only recover a little, it would be enough for him to open his storage ring. Unfortunately, there was too little spiritual energy. At that moment, there was a knock on the door, followed by Shui Er's voice. "Senior Yi, may I come in?" "Enter," Yi Chun replied. Subsequently, he got up and walked to his daughter who was sleeping on the swing in the distance. This girl can actually fall asleep like this. If she were on Earth, she wouldn't even know if she was kidnapped. Creak, Shui pushed the door open and entered. She looked at Meng Meng, who was asleep first, before saying to Yi Chun, "Senior Yi, His Royal Highness has invited you." "King Langya?" Yi Chun squinted. "Why does he want to see me?" Shui answered without hesitation. "It's because Senior Yi saved His Highness. His Highness wishes to thank you personally." In the Langya Palace, Yi Chun followed Shui into the main hall and felt countless gazes on him. "Your Highness, Senior Yi is here." Shui kept her head lowered throughout. She bowed respectfully before leaving the hall. On the high platform, King Langya looked at Yi Chun in a condescending manner. He said in a dignified manner, "Are you Mr. Yi?" Yi Chun lifted his head and looked straight at the latter. He said in a manner that was neither humble nor arrogant, "You must be King Langya, right? Impudent." As a cold snort sounded, Hong Fei took a step forward and berated, "Not only did you not bow in front of His Highness, but you even stared at him. How rude." After saying that, he glanced at King Langya proudly. To him, someone like King Langya who had been in a high position for a long time would definitely dislike Yi Chun. But to his disappointment, King Langya's face remained expressionless from beginning to end, and no one could see through him. At the critical moment, Lu Fei took the initiative to stand up for Yi Chun. "Father, this is Senior Yi who saved me. Mr. Yi is indeed a dragon among men. Just his bearing alone is extraordinary." King Langya nodded slightly and said, "Men, give Mr. Yi a seat and serve the banquet." Subsequently, someone brought a chair for Yi Chun. Yi Chun sat down in front of everyone without hesitation. He's indeed a vulgar person. Hong Fei could not help but feel extremely jealous when he saw that. As the banquet began, King Langya took the initiative to stand up and toast Yi Chun from afar after pouring a cup of wine. "This is a toast to Mr. Yi. Thank you for saving my daughter." Yi Chun stood up and returned the toast. "It's nothing. You're too kind, Your Highness." He had always been like that. "If you respect me, I'll naturally respect you back." After saying that, he drank the wine in the wine bottle in his hand in one gulp. Immediately, he felt the wine turn into an extremely hot stream that spread to his limbs and bones as soon as it entered his stomach. Spiritual wine. Yi Chun's heart skipped a beat. Although it was only a cup of spiritual wine, the effect was more effective than all of his efforts in the courtyard earlier. Mr. Yi is straightforward. A hint of admiration appeared in King Langya's eyes when he saw Yi Chun finish it in one gulp. "You must know that this wine of mine was brewed from a 300-year-old fire spirit fruit. Ordinary people would fall asleep for 3 days and 3 nights just by smelling it, let alone drinking it." After saying that, he filled another cup and toasted Hong Tai Sui and the rest. Hong Fei could not help but groan as soon as he took a sip. After a round of toasting, King Langya looked at Yi Chun again. "Mr. Yi, you saved my daughter's life. I wonder how you want me to repay you?" Everyone in the hall looked at Yi Chun as soon as he said that. They seemed to be curious about what request he would make. "What else can he ask for?" Hong Fei said coldly, "Being able to save Fei is an honor that he will never be able to obtain in his entire life." However, Yi Chun said with a light smile, "I'm afraid you can't afford what I want, Your Highness." As his voice fell, whoosh, the hall was in an uproar. Everyone's faces were filled with disbelief. Not only did you dare to ask for it, how dare he say that he couldn't afford it? At that moment, Hong Fei almost burst out laughing. To him, Yi Chun was the first person who dared to speak to King Langya like that. The consequence was that King Langya would be displeased. He would be chased out on the spot, and he would be killed on the spot. Lu Fei was shocked as well. "Senior Yi, Princess Lu, I've saved your life twice. It's nothing. It's fine if you don't take the initiative to ask me for something." Yi Chun ignored the latter's gaze and said firmly, "However, since you've taken the initiative to ask for something, it'll seem a little pretentious and hypocritical if I shake my head again." Lu Fei was speechless when she heard that. She did not mind Yi Chun's words. After all, it was a fact that Yi Chun had saved her. It was reasonable for him to do something. What she was nervous about was that her father had never liked people who repaid kindness. Yi Chun's actions would undoubtedly offend her father. Under everyone's gaze, King Langya's expression finally turned cold. "I'm suddenly curious about what Mr. Yi is after. He can't even afford to give it to me." His tone was filled with displeasure. Putting aside the fact that the Langya residence was vast and rich in resources, with his identity as King Langya, power and women were like floating clouds. "Father," Lu Fei wanted to say something, but hesitated. King Langya waved his hand to stop her. "Let him continue." Yi Chun poured himself another glass of wine and said calmly after finishing it, "I want half of the spirit stone vein in your Langya residence." He had thought about it on the way here. If he wanted to recover his true origin energy quickly, he could only rely on the spirit stone vein. The Langya residence occupied tens of thousands of kilometers. Chapter 1067. As soon as Yichin said that, the hall fell into a momentary silence. The entire hall fell into a momentary silence. Everyone's eyes widened as they looked at the former in disbelief. Even Lu Fei covered her red lips with her hand, thinking that she had heard wrongly. To a country or a sect, money was nothing. The most important thing was the mystic stone vein. That was because the vein could continuously produce heaven and earth origin energy, and it could even replenish the origin energy of cultivators. The so-called spirit stones were the highest grade, evolved from the purest mystic stones. They could be said to be even more precious than mystic stones. That was because there were only dozens of spirit stones in a mystic stone vein. Now that Yi Chun asked for half of the spirit stone vein, if it was not asking for an exorbitant price, what was it if it was not asking for an exorbitant price? Are you crazy? Hong Fei jumped out immediately and said while pointing at Yi Chun, "How dare you ask for half of the spirit stone vein?" Hong Tai Sui and the rest sneered. They were practically sentencing Yi Chun to death in their hearts. King Langya's hand that was holding the cup froze instantly. A strong, killing intent flashed through the depths of his deep eyes. Yi Chen's words had really touched his reverse scale. However, he was a shrewd person. He dispersed his killing intent in a few seconds and took a deep breath in. Mr. Ye's request is indeed very high. I can't afford it. With that, he waved his hand, send the guest away. Subsequently, a guard walked over and said expressionlessly, "Please, Father." Lu Fei stood up subconsciously and tried to plead for Yi Chun. However, King Langya remained unmoved, as if he did not hear her. "Leave now, brat." Hong Fei laughed out loud. However, Yi Chun did not move at all. He said without even lifting his head, "King Langya, what if I say that you don't have much time left and only I can save your life?" The moment that was said, the entire place fell silent. Lu Fei turned around and looked at him in disbelief before closing her eyes in despair. Crazy. Misty was really crazy. Father was only injured because there was a problem with his cultivation. Why did he say that he didn't have much time left? Beastrice starred. At this moment, even Hong Tai Sui, who hadn't spoken all along, stood out and said in a cold voice, "Fellow Yi, you dare to curse His Highness? Are you really not afraid of death? Take him down." Hong Fei wished to see the world in chaos. Thud, thud, thud. Almost at that moment, countless guards rushed in from outside the hall and surrounded Yi Chun. What they did not notice was that the moment Yi Chun spoke, King Langya, who had his back to them, trembled slightly. But he still did not turn around. Yi Chun remained indifferent despite being surrounded by swords and sabers. "King Langya, if I'm not mistaken, your Langya royal residence is currently facing internal and external troubles, right? You are the only spiritual pillar of the Wangfu, and also the strongest. Think about it. If you die, your Wangfu will definitely collapse like a building. Everything you protect will be implicated enough." Before he could finish, King Langya suddenly turned around and flew into a rage. "Mr. Yi, you've offended me many times. You should be executed, but for my daughter's sake, scram." As soon as he said that, the surrounding guards surrounded him. Clearly, they wanted to take Yi Chun down. Forget it. I'll leave." Yi Chun smiled lightly and did not mind. He picked up a wine glass and stood up. He flashed past the countless guards and eventually disappeared from the hall. Hong Fei panicked when he saw that. "Your Highness, this person is so rude. How can we let him leave so easily?" "That's right." Hong Tai Sui also said, "I don't mind helping your Highness get rid of this hidden danger." "There's no need." King Langya waved his hand and interrupted. "The banquet continues. No one is allowed to leave without my order." Upon hearing this, Hong Tai Sui could only suppress the killing intent in his heart, while Lu Fei looked at King Langya gratefully. The reason being, she knew that King Langya seemed to be heartless, but he was actually protecting Yi Chun. As long as Hong Tai Sui and the rest could not leave, Yi Chun would have a chance to escape. The banquet was very long. Hong Tai Sui and the rest glanced at the drunken King Langya and asked to leave many times, but they were rejected. It was not until late at night that King Langya announced the end of the banquet. Hong Tai Sui and the rest left the residence under the protection of the guards. As soon as they left, King Langya, who was originally drunk, waved his hand to dismiss everyone, leaving only Lu Fei behind. Blurg! At that moment, King Langya could not help but spit a mouthful of black blood. His face quickly turned pale as he fell to the ground. "Father, are you all right?" Lu Fei turned pale and hurried forward. "I've been poisoned." King Langya suddenly grabbed her hand tightly and said weakly, "Fei, quick, get that Mr. Yi back." "What did you say?" Lu Fei was in disbelief. "Fei, I've been hiding this from you. I wasn't injured while cultivating. I was poisoned, and it's a rare poison." King Langya smiled bitterly. "I can only live for a month at most. That's why I didn't ask you to go to the Ice Plains to look for the Ice Jade Lotus, because there's no cure." "Father, who poisoned me?" Lu Fei's face was ashen. She was shocked and furious. "It's the Bright Sword Pavilion." King Langya spat another mouthful of black blood. "Silly child. Ever since His Majesty passed away and a young master took over, many vassals have been restless." Lu Fei felt like she was struck by lightning. The Bright Sword Pavilion. That was the sect that her father trusted the most. Hong Tai Sui and the rest were from the Bright Sword Pavilion, including King Dai, King Chu, and King Yu. They've been plotting a rebellion. They're secretly recruiting troops and forging weapons. King Langya said intermittently, "Langya County is rich in iron ore. That's why they want to drag you into the rebellion with them." At this point, his eyes widened and his face flushed red. "I'm deeply indebted to the Emperor. I'm also the young master's uncle. How can I do such a rebellious thing? I'd rather die than do it." "So, they poisoned you?" Lu Fei's heart was struck by lightning. She was extremely heartbroken. "That Mr. Yi is right." King Langya panted heavily and said, "I'm not afraid of death, but I can't die. Once I die, Langya County will be finished. My dynasty will be finished too." "Father, since Senior Yi could tell that you were poisoned, why didn't you let him stay?" Lu Fei was confused. "Silly child." King Langya smiled bitterly. "The Bright Sword Pavilion tried to harm me, and Hong Tai Sui and the rest were monitoring me. Now that Mr. Yi said that I'm dying in front of them, he's asking for trouble." Buzz. At that moment, Lu Fei's mind went blank. Then, she became extremely clear-headed. That's right. Once father shows his intention to believe it, Hong Tai Sui and the rest would probably attack on the spot, although they were few in number. However, in such a huge mansion, who could guarantee that everyone was loyal? Who could guarantee that the other vassals' forces had not infiltrated? "Father, just you wait. I'll go and invite Mr. Yi immediately. Forget half of the spiritual stone mine. I won't hesitate, even if it's all of it." Lu Fei left quickly without saying a word. Chapter 1068. It was night in Wuqing City. Wuqing City was a city under the jurisdiction of Langya County. It covered an area of 10,000 acres and was about 50 kilometers away from the Langya Palace. In a dilapidated temple on the outskirts of the city, there was a faint ball of fire blooming. The fire was swaying from the wind that blew in. The little girl leaned against the mountain god statue and stared at the deer leg that was almost done in Yi Chen's hand with her eyes wide open. "Daddy, is it done yet? I'm hungry. It's almost done. Wait a little longer." Yi Chen smiled helplessly. He flipped the deer leg on the fire and began sprinkling spices such as salt and salt on it. Crackle, crackle. As soon as the spices were sprinkled on it, a series of explosions came. The deer leg turned golden, and the golden oil dripped into the fire. "It smells so good." The little girl was drooling, and her stomach was growling. "All right, eat up, greedy kitty." Yi Chen tore a small piece off and blew on it before passing it to her. He wiped the little girl's face while he was at it. The little girl looked like a little kitten. She lifted her face and wiped it on Yi Chen's clothes. She then picked up the deer meat and started eating. "Daddy, you're bad. How's Daddy's cooking?" Yichen watched his daughter gobble quietly, feeling a little guilty. The little girl said in a muffled voice, "It's so." Yichen could not help but laugh. "When I find Mommy, I won't do anything. I'll open a barbecue shop to support you and Mommy. How about that?" "Daddy, you won't be able to support us if that's the case." The little girl put down the things in her hands and looked at him in all seriousness. Yichen was stunned. "Why? Daddy's dumb." The little girl smiled slyly. "I have to eat a lot alone. I have Mommy, brother, grandpa, grandma, and little uncle." Yichen was stunned. Hoo. At that moment, the firewood in front of the father and daughter suddenly fluttered violently. Strong and weak winds blew in from outside the door. Yichen secretly shook his head. "They're a little slow." As soon as he said that, a series of air-piercing sounds came from outside. Then, several figures descended outside the temple. Subsequently, an old man in brocade robes with a scabbard on his back walked in slowly. It was Hong Tai-sui. The other party looked at the situation in the temple expressionlessly before looking at Yi Chun. "Fellow, you've made me wait for a long time." Yi Chun was unmoved. He fiddled with the firewood with his hand. "You guys made me wait. Looks like you know why I'm here." Hong Tai-sui took a good look at him. Clearly, he did not expect Yi Fu-Tian to be so calm and composed. "I have one thing to say. As long as fellow Yi submits to the Bright Sword Pavilion, I can spare the lives of you and your daughter." Just as he finished speaking, Hong Fei walked in from outside and sneered. "Father, this brat is just a useless physical cultivator. Just kill him. Why bother talking nonsense with him?" "Fellow Taoist Yi, what do you think?" Hong Tai-sui seemed to have not heard him. He looked at Yi Chun fixedly. "There's a limit to my patience. There are several powerhouses from my Bright Sword Pavilion sealing the temple at the moment. You won't be able to escape, even if you have wings. There's something I don't understand. Why do all of you want to kill me? Is it because of Lu Fei?" Yi Chun did not even raise his head. Hong Fei said subconsciously, "That's because you saw through His Highness' injuries. Shut up." Hong Tai-sui interrupted him before he could finish his words. The latter said coldly, "Fellow Yi, don't expect anyone from Prince Langyu's mansion to come and save you. You only have two choices tonight. Either you die or you surrender." "That's right. Brat, if you don't want to die, kneel down and kowtow to us." Hong Fei's expression was ferocious. "Otherwise, after we kill you, we'll ravage your daughter." To him, his father, Hong Tai-sui, was also a pseudo-emperor stage cultivator, and he was a sword cultivator. Coupled with the fact that the martial uncles outside had sealed the place, no matter how powerful Yi Chen's explosive power was, he had no choice. "I want to let you guys live for a few more breaths." Yi Chen's eyes turned cold when he heard that. He said slowly, "Congratulations on touching my reverse scale. Not only will you guys die today, but I'll also destroy the sects behind you. You're courting death." A ferocious gleam flashed in Hong Tai-sui's eyes as he took a step forward. The scabbard behind him trembled nonstop, as if it could be unsheathed at any time. "You want to have a chance to draw your sword in front of me, you ant-like thing?" His golden palm and fingers turned into the size of a millstone. He clenched his fist hard, causing the surrounding space to distort. Hong Tai-sui subconsciously wanted to control his sword to slash out, but he realized that his body could not move at all. It was as if he was imprisoned by an irresistible force. As Hong Fei watched in horror, he saw his father being grabbed by Yi Chun and lifted into the air. Who exactly are you?" Hong Tai-sui's eyes widened, almost bursting out of their sockets. His entire body was trembling. He was a pseudo-emperor stage cultivator, yet he was so easily subdued by a young man. He could not resist at all. Powerlessness, despair, fear. Yi Chun squinted and said, "I'm someone you can't afford to offend." As soon as he finished speaking, Hong Tai-sui, who was in his hand, turned into a pool of blood mist. Upon seeing that, Hong Fei ran out of the temple without saying a word. He roared repeatedly, "Uncle Master Chung, Uncle Master Feng, run, run, quickly run." Yi Chun smirked coldly. He took a step out of the temple directly. Powerful killing intent swept out in all directions like a huge wave. At the same time, less than 20 kilometers away from the dilapidated temple, two figures were rushing toward the temple at a speed that surpassed the speed of sound. If one took a closer look, they would realize that it was an old man in gray who was grabbing a woman's shoulder with one hand. Lu Fei's heart was in a mess. Bonan, quick, hurry up. We can't let anything happen to Senior Yi. Princess, this is already my fastest speed. Bonan smiled bitterly when he heard that. Although he said that, he did not care at all. He was a guest of the Langya King's mansion, and now he had to personally save a body cultivator. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, when Bonan brought Lu Fei to the dilapidated temple, he realized that there were no signs of a fight. Meanwhile, Yi Chun and his daughter, who she was looking for, were eating in the temple at the moment. Lu Fei cannot be bothered to think too much. After walking into the temple quickly, she looked at Yi Chun in concern. Senior Yi, are you all right? Why are you here? Yi Chun said calmly. He could only blame himself for being too powerful earlier and not leaving anyone alive. Therefore, he did not know the relationship between Hong Tai Sui and the rest and the Langya King's mansion. Therefore, when he faced Lu Fei, he was more on guard. Senior Yi, things are very complicated. I don't have time to explain. Come back to the mansion with me first. Lu Fei shook her head and said apologetically, My father wants to see you again. End of this chapter. Chapter 1069. Almost at that moment, in the Bright Sword Pavilion, thousands of miles away from Wuching City, an old man holding a sword looked at the broken soul tablets in front of him and said expressionlessly, Hong Tai Sui and the others are dead. Who dares to kill someone from my Bright Sword Pavilion? An expert standing behind him was enraged. One of the higher-ups frowned and said, Could it be that King Langya took the initiative to attack? What a good Lu Qingzhou. He's poisoned and he still dares to be dishonest. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have let him live until now. Another person said coldly, The 8 kings are ready. The higher-ups in the army have already instigated half of their defections. Now, they're just waiting for us. The sword-wielding old man narrowed his eyes and said, Inform the other 3 clans that it's time for us to lay our cards on the table tonight. Today is the day to lay the groundwork for us. 2 hours later, Langya Palace. After King Langya, who was forcing himself to leave, he suddenly bowed to Yi Chun heavily. Mr. Yi, please save me. Yi Chun remained unmoved. He smiled wryly. Why did you do that, Your Highness? This Yi can't accept it. King Langya could not help but smile bitterly. During the day, Mr. Yi said that I don't have much time left. I couldn't express my opinion in front of outsiders, so I chased Mr. Yi out. Outsiders? Yi Chun frowned. Meanwhile, Lu Fei bit her lips and said, Senior Yi, there's something you're not aware of. Undercurrents are surging within my Langya estate, so Royal Father is extremely careful. Seeing that the father and daughter were still stammering and unwilling to reveal too much, Yi Chun smiled lightly. It's very simple if you want me to save you. I want all the spirit stone veins in Langya County. King Langya was shocked to hear this. Lu Fei couldn't help but ask, Senior Yi, didn't you say that you only wanted half? That was during the day. It's night now. I've suddenly changed my mind. Yi Chun said calmly. Lu Fei was speechless. King Langya's expression changed a few times before he took a deep breath in. May I ask how Mr. Yi is so sure that I can heal my injuries? In the end, he still harbored doubts in his heart. His poison was simply too strange. He had secretly sought out countless famous doctors, but none of them could do anything. How could Yi Chun not understand what he meant? He smiled lightly. If I'm not mistaken, Your Highness' injuries weren't caused by a mistake in your cultivation, but by poison. As soon as he finished speaking, King Langya and Lu Fei's expressions changed. May I ask what poison it is? King Langya asked. Yi Chun chuckled softly. I call the poison that Your Highness is poisoned with the disaster, filthy poison. You can understand it, as the poisonous gas has long been assimilated with your spiritual qi and your internal organs. As long as you exercise your martial arts, the poison will invade your heart faster, and you will feel excruciating pain as if thousands of arrows are piercing through your heart and bugs are gnawing at it. As his voice fell, King Langya's expression changed completely. His symptoms were exactly the same as what Yi Chun had said. There was no discrepancy at all. Usually, there would be a poison source in the body. As long as the poison source was removed, the body would recover. However, the poison source in his body was his spiritual qi. If he wanted to remove it, he could only disperse his cultivation. Once he dispersed his cultivation, what was the difference between him and a cripple? He bowed to Yi Chun as he thought to this point. Please save me, Mr. Yi. At that moment, he was truly convinced by Yi Chun. Yi Chun was unmoved. He knocked the table with his hand. Do you agree to my condition? King Langya hesitated for a few moments before saying bluntly, Misty, you might not know this, but the Langya Palace isn't as united as outsiders think. There are several major cultivation sects in the territory. At this point, there was helplessness in his eyes. Although resources like the mystic stone veins belong to my palace in name, they're all taken by them. You're a dignified king after all. Why do you lack restraint and deterrence toward the sects in the territory? Yi Chun frowned. King Langya's face alternated between green and white. Senior Yi, my father is an emperor stage powerhouse. If it was half a year ago, these sects would have to be careful as if they were walking on thin ice. Lu Fei could not bear to say, however, ever since my father was poisoned, his deterrence is gone. Coupled with the infiltration of other forces, my Langya Palace is already in a precarious situation. If that's the case, then forgive me for being powerless. Yi Chun shook his head with an indifferent expression. Since these mystic stone veins are in the hands of the sects, why should I make a deal with you? Senior Yi, the other sects won't make a deal with you. After all, the mystic stone veins are the foundation of the sects. Lu Fei sighed softly. Yi Chun smiled lightly. It's very simple. If they're unwilling to make a deal with me, then I can only rob them openly. King Langya and Lu Fei were in disbelief when they heard that. They thought they had heard wrongly. Rob them openly? Even when King Langya was at his peak, he did not dare to say such bold words. One had to know that there were 4 great sects in Langya County. Each sect had countless powerhouses, and there were even emperor-stage old monsters. Meanwhile, Yi Chun was a mere pseudo-emperor-stage body cultivator. What could he do? At this moment, a cold voice came from outside. Rob them openly? What shameless boasting. Immediately after, 2 figures appeared in the hall like ghosts. They were a man and a woman. The woman in the lead was dressed in black, and her facial features were covered by a veil. All of them emitted a cold aura. Even so, the black clothes still could not cover her exquisite figure and mature womanly aura. Behind her was a young man in a Taoist robe. The young man had his hair combed into a high bun and held a horsetail whisk in his hand. He was slightly respectful to the former. The moment she saw the 2 of them, Lu Fei's pretty face changed slightly. Who are you? How did you get in? One had to know that there was an emperor-stage old monster guarding outside the hall at this moment. Outsiders could not enter at all. Plop. On the other hand, King Langya knelt heavily on the ground with an excited expression. Greetings, Empress Dowager. The moment that was said, Lu Fei was stunned on the spot. Empress Dowager. The woman in black before her was the Empress Dowager. Even Yi Chun was shocked. He could not help but take another look at the woman in black. The Empress Dowager actually came here late at night. What surprised him the most was that this so-called Empress Dowager was actually at the Emperor's stage, and the young man in the Taoist robe beside her was also at the Emperor's stage. The woman in black spoke slowly, and an extremely weak voice was heard. Lu Qing, there's no need to be so polite. Please rise. That voice was extremely charming. If an ordinary man heard it, all the bones in his body would probably go limp. As an invisible force swept over, King Langya could not help but stand up. The latter hesitated and said, Empress Dowager, why are you here? The capital was tens of thousands of kilometers away from the Langya King's mansion. Even with large spiritual beasts, it would take a day to get there. Moreover, it was late at night. Into this chapter. Chapter 1070. The lady in black glanced at Yi Chun secretly. The meaning in her eyes was self-evident. King Langya reacted immediately. Killing intent flashed through his eyes, but he said, Mr. Yi is not an outsider. Don't worry about him. Empress Dowager. Yi Chen secretly sneered after seeing everything. King Langya's loyalty had reached such a level. He actually wanted to kill him at the risk of his own life just to keep the Empress Dowager's secret. Lu Qingjia has suffered. The lady in black looked at the latter, and there was a hint of heartache in her weak voice. I came late at night to visit Lu Qingjia. I heard that she was severely injured. She said that from the bottom of her heart. Ever since the late emperor passed away and the young master, who was only 15 years old, ascended the throne, many of the vassals refused to accept the young master and gradually became disloyal. The one who could be considered a loyal person was the former brother of the late emperor. I deserve to die. I've troubled the Empress Dowager. King Langya knelt on the ground again. He could not help but cry. Nothing could move him more than this. The lady in black raised her hand and said, "This is the disciple of the imperial tutor. I heard that you've been ill for a long time, so I brought him here to take a look at you. Your Highness, I'm Shuang. I know some medical skills. I'm here on my master's orders to treat you." The young man in the Taoist robe took a step forward and cupped his hands. He's the imperial tutor's disciple. King Langya's eyes were filled with endless respect when he heard that. He then recalled, "Is the imperial tutor well?" There were two legendary figures in the dynasty. The first was naturally the founding emperor, and the second was the imperial tutor, Qi Tiandao. It was said that he was once a close friend of the founding emperor. He entered the dynasty because of a promise and protected the sect for generations. It had been 1,000 years since then. Rumor had it that the imperial tutor, Qi Tiandao, was extremely powerful and had long seen through the secrets of heaven. He was like an immortal, but he still could not escape the pain of aging and dying. My master is still the same. Shui Ying's expression was gloomy. He's most worried about you, Your Highness. However, due to many things, he couldn't come personally. After saying that, he calmed himself and walked forward. He held King Langya's right hand and said, "Your Highness, there's no time. Let Shuang take a look at you first." "That's fine too." King Langya could not help but look at Yi Chen. In the end, he chose to give Shuang a chance. After all, Yi Chen did not promise to cure him. During this time, the woman in black first looked at Lu Fei and said with a smile, "You must be Feier? I didn't expect it to be so big now." Thur greets Empress Dowager. Lu Fei subconsciously wanted to kneel on the ground, but the former held her tightly. "You don't have to be so formal. In the end, I am still your aunt." "Yes, aunt." Lu Fei's heart warmed up. Black Shirt nodded lightly and looked at Yi Chen. She frowned slightly. "This is Aunt. Senior Yi is Fei Er's savior." Lu Fei introduced Yi Chen slowly. When she heard Yi Chen diagnose King Langya's condition and asked for all the mystic stone vein, not only her, but even Shuang was shocked. The lady in black looked at Yi Chen quietly. "I wonder who your master is, Mr. Yi. Why did you come to our dynasty?" "I don't belong to any sect. I'm just a rogue cultivator. It was purely an accident that I came to a major sect," Yi Chen said calmly. After hearing the words, "don't belong to any sect," the lady in black's phoenix-like eyes that were hidden under the veil focused slightly. Then she said, "What a pity. A body cultivator is destined to be unable to become an emperor." At that moment, Shuang slowly retracted his hand, his expression changing nonstop. "Brother Shuang, can my father be saved?" Lu Fei was extremely nervous. Even the lady in black and King Langya were no exception. Shuang let out a heavy sigh. Then he stood up and cupped his fists at King Langya. Then he bowed to the lady in black and said, "Empress Dowager, I'm incompetent. I can't remove the poison in His Highness's body." The moment that was said, everyone fell silent. Lu Fei and King Langya smiled bitterly. The lady in black sighed faintly. "Is there really no other way? Lord Shuang, if my master was here, there might be a glimmer of hope. Unfortunately, my master can't leave." Shuang shook his head lightly and could not help but look at Yi Chen. If Mr. Yi didn't say that the poison in His Highness's body was the woeful poison, Shuang would still not understand until now. He was an honest and upright person. Although he was cold because of Yi Chen's arrogant words earlier, He could not help but admire Yi Chen's insight. As soon as he said that, everyone in the hall looked at Yi Chen at the same time. Even the lady in black was no exception. King Langya shook his head lightly. Yi Chen had made the conditions very clear earlier, and he could not do it with his current strength. Perhaps he could pretend to agree to Yi Chen and go back on his word later on to kill Yi Chen. After all, Yi Chen only had a pseudo-emperor stage cultivation base. However, Lu Qingzhou, was a king after all. He could not do such an unscrupulous thing. In the end, it was the lady in black who spoke. Mr. Yi, if you can cure Lady Lu's family, I can give you a mystic mastermind or even spirit stones. At this point, she added, I'm the Empress Dowager of the current dynasty. I have the power of regent, and I can transfer the imperial court's resources to you. Why should I believe you? Yi Chen said calmly. He thought that he could control the negotiation with King Langya earlier. However, since it was the Empress Dowager, it would add a lot of trouble. After all, if the other party went back on her word, Yi Chen would be going against an entire dynasty. Although he was not afraid, he did not want any trouble. The lady in black fell silent, causing the atmosphere in the hall to be deathly silent. Senior Yi, if you want to go to the Tianfeng Sea area, you must use the teleportation formation. Lu Fei bit her lip and said to Yi Chen while looking at him, the northern region is hundreds of thousands of kilometers away from the Tianfeng Sea area. Moreover, there are spatial rifts and endless seas. She paused for a moment before continuing. Ordinary teleportation formations can only cross thousands of kilometers. Only large wormholes can send you to the Tianfeng Sea area. Only the imperial court has large wormholes in the entire dynasty. The lady in black's beautiful eyes lit up. She looked at her in admiration and said to Yi Chen, that's right. If you can cure Lady Lu's family, I can lend you the wormhole. If I go back on my word, I'll be abandoned by both men and gods. Empress Dowager. King Langya was extremely touched. He did not expect the imperial court to make such a concession for him. This had never happened before. Yi Chen weighed the pros and cons. Just when he was about to agree, he suddenly looked outside the hall. Almost at that moment, Nan Bo's furious roar came from outside. Who is it? How dare you barge into the Langya palace at night? Rumble. Following that, a violent tremor was heard. Enemy attack, enemy attack. The entire Langya palace was in an uproar. All sorts of screams, explosions, and battle cries could be heard. End of this chapter. Chapter 1071. What happened? At that moment, Lu Fei's expression changed drastically. Tap, tap, tap. At that moment, an armored man rushed and covered in blood and fell to the ground. Your Highness, they're rebelling. The Bright Sword Pavilion is rebelling. We can't hold them back anymore. Let's retreat. What? The Bright Sword Pavilion is rebelling? King Langya almost lost his balance when he heard this. Although this king had expected this day, I didn't expect it to come so soon. With that said, he immediately said to the woman in black, Empress Dowager, leave quickly. It doesn't matter if I die, but nothing must happen to you. The Empress Dowager was temporarily in charge of the regency of the dynasty. This matter concerned the rise and fall of the country. Once the rebels found out that the Empress Dowager was here, everything would be over. Empress Dowager, let's go. I'll protect you with my life. The horsetail whisk in Shui Ying's hand trembled violently, and he immediately made a spear. Bang, bang, bang. Right at that moment, the door of the hall was broken open, and several mutilated and badly mutilated corpses flew in. More than 10 figures with powerful auras rushed in. A cold man with a surging corpse aura laughed loudly. Haha, Brother Su, I didn't expect that we would have a new harvest today and capture the Empress Dowager. I'm also extremely surprised. Who would have thought that the Empress Dowager would travel thousands of kilometers to Langya County? The person called Brother Su was an old man with a sword on his back. His temples were white, and his face was filled with ecstasy. More than 10 people blocked the exit of the hall and surrounded them with a murderous aura. Seeing this scene, even the black-clothed woman's expression changed. 6 Emperor stage cultivators and 12 pseudo-emperors. Even though such combat strength was nothing in the imperial capital, it was monstrously terrifying in Langya County. King Langya took a step forward and looked at the old man with a sword in his eyes. Su Huaiyan, how dare you betray me? The old man took a step forward and sneered. Lu Qingzhou, it's not that we want to rebel against you. You're the one who doesn't know what's good for you and refused to join our rebellion plan. Lu Qingzhou, do you still recognize this old man? Another old man with a sinister face walked out. King Langya was shocked. Ma Jinan, it's you. The Ma Jinan he mentioned was one of the 13 vassal kings, the counselor of the acting king. It was this person who went around persuading the vassal kings to rebel against the imperial court. You still recognize this old man? Ma Jinan snickered and stroked his beard. Half a year ago, I was ordered by the acting king to persuade you. However, you didn't know what was good for you, and I could only get the Bright Sword Pavilion to secretly poison you. At this point, he said with a ferocious expression, what do you think? The taste of the woeful, filthy poison isn't pleasant, is it? After half a year, this fierce tiger has finally become a sick tiger. Su Huaiyan, Chen Shifan, Zhou Kong Tong, Shun Shiha. King Langya's pained gaze fell on the 3 Emperor Realm cultivators. I've always treated you well, and neither has the imperial court. Why did you betray me? Why are you rebelling? Lu Qingzhou, do you still not understand? The old man from the Bright Sword Pavilion smirked. You, Lu Qingzhou, are the current king. Naturally, you've enjoyed enough glory and wealth. However, we're just commoners. If that's the case, why don't we follow the acting king and fight for a bright future? King Langya vomited blood on the spot. Traitors, you traitors should have your entire family executed and your corpses dismembered. It's useless to say so much. Today, the Langya royal residence will be destroyed. From today onwards, Langya County will belong to the acting king. Ma Jinan scoffed and looked at the woman in black. The only thing that surprised me was that I actually saw the Empress Dowager here. Looks like the heavens are on our side. Su Huaiyan laughed. Once we capture the Empress Dowager, we can use her to force the little emperor to hand over the imperial power. That's right. If the little emperor doesn't open the city gates and hand over the imperial power, he will be unfilial. Chen Shifan's face darkened. Once that happens, the little emperor's prestige will be greatly reduced. The acting king can then lead his army north in the name of protecting the emperor. I heard that the current Empress Dowager was just a concubine the day before the late emperor died. She had just turned 20 and died before the late emperor could even visit her. Zhou Mingdong looked at the woman in black lustfully. He did not hide the evil in his eyes. If that's the case, the Empress Dowager is still a virgin. I really want to taste her. As soon as he said that, the dozen people behind him looked at the woman in black greedily. The woman in black trembled slightly. Bastard, you bunch of bastards. King Langya revealed a crazed expression. If you want to touch the Empress Dowager, you have to step over my dead body first. The next moment, the aura in his body started to rise at a terrifying speed. In an instant, it reached the martial Emperor realm. However, the speed did not slow down. It was still rising. In the end, he actually stepped into the supreme giant realm. Ma Jinan was shocked. Lu Qingzhou, you've really gone mad. Don't you know that the more you raise your cultivation, the faster the poison will corrode your body? I've indeed gone mad. However, before I die, I'll drag you all down with me. King Langya laughed maniacally before charging forward in an incomparably tragic manner. You traitors die. Father, Lu Fei almost fainted. Empress Dowager, Princess, let's go. A hint of sorrow flashed through Shui Ying's eyes. Then, he led the two of them to the back of the hall without hesitation. Lu Fei turned around and said to Yi Chun immediately, Senior Yi, come with us. You're only at the pseudo-emperor stage. You're no match for them. However, at the next moment, an unparalleled pressure descended from the void, directly bombarding the frenzied King Langya. An incomparably old figure descended. Bang! King Langya immediately took more than 10 steps back and spat out blood. His facial features were like charcoal as he looked at the old man in black. Martial ancestor. You actually arranged for a martial ancestor. There was a slight difference between the cultivation system of the ancient desolate realm and Earth. Above the Emperor's stage was not a supreme giant, but a martial ancestor. A martial ancestor was the same as a supreme giant on Earth. Greetings, senior son. Majinan and the rest knelt on one knee. A powerhouse sent by the acting king of the people who had descended. A martial ancestor. The old man in black looked straight at King Langya and said calmly, King Langya, you surprised me. For your so-called loyalty, you're actually willing to burn your life force. With that, he waved his hand. Leave this person to me. Go capture the Empress Dowager. Yes. Majinan and the rest immediately stood up and flew towards Shui Ying and the rest who had already reached the exit of the hall. How dare you? King Langya was on the verge of going crazy. He attacked brazenly, but the old man in black easily neutralized it. A martial ancestor that burns his life force is not a true martial ancestor after all. At the same time, after Majinan pushed Shui Ying back with a palm, he directly grabbed the woman in black. Empress Dowager, if you don't want to suffer, it's best if you don't resist. Facing such a dangerous situation, the woman in black suddenly felt inexplicably calm. Former Emperor, although I never liked you, I'm grateful for your trust. That's why I treated Jing like a younger brother. Today, I can only repay your kindness with my death. With that said, she used her fingers as a knife and slashed at her own neck with incomparable determination. Empress Dowager, I'm useless. King Langya cried blood when he saw that. Lu Fei was in despair. Shui Ying roared, no. At that moment, a wide hand suddenly grabbed her slender hand and said calmly, if you die, how are you going to fulfill your promise with me? P.S. Chapter 4, I found my form. Brothers, please get monthly votes and recommendation votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1072. In the Langya King's mansion, the woman in black saw that she had nowhere to go. Just as she was about to kill herself, she felt her hand being held. Before she could react, an extremely calm voice rang in her ears. If you die, how are you going to fulfill your promise with me? The moment she said that, she opened her eyes and subconsciously looked at the person beside her. It was him, the pseudo-emperor stage body cultivator that Fei mentioned. He was the one who stopped her. She was not the only one. Even Lu Fei, Shui Ying, and even Ma Zhenan and the rest were stunned. In her panic, the woman in black subconsciously struggled free from her hand. I'll let go of me. At this moment, she did not call herself a widow. Although she was in charge of a huge sect like a dynasty, she was still a weak woman at this point. Yichen was unmoved. He looked at her calmly. I only have one thing to say. Does what you said earlier still count? What? The woman in black was slightly stunned. Then, she recalled her promise earlier. As long as Yichun cured Lu Qing's poison, she would give him spirit stones. She would even lend him the wormhole. Thinking to this point, she forced a smile helplessly. Is there a need to say this now? In order to stop the martial ancestor of the rebels, Lu Qing had ignored the poison and forcefully moved. She had even burned her life. It could be said that she would definitely die. Meanwhile, they were being hunted by the 6 martial emperors, and they had no chance of survival. How could they have the chance to talk about anything else? There's a need, Yichun said calmly, because that will make me reconsider whether I should save you guys. As soon as he finished speaking, the woman in black was stunned. Everyone, including Lu Fei, was in disbelief. They thought they had heard wrongly. Ha ha ha. Ma Zhenan could not help but laugh. This brat actually said that he would save them in front of us. Did I hear wrongly? I think this brat thinks that the Empress Dowager is pretty good and wants to show his loyalty before he dies. The sword-wielding old man, Su Huaiyan, had a disdainful expression. The rest of the people also laughed nonstop, and their brows were filled with dense disdain. Lying on the ground, Shui Ying smiled helplessly. You're a pseudo-emperor realm body cultivator. Even though your combat strength is stronger than a pseudo-emperor chi cultivator of the same realm, there are 6 martial emperors and a martial ancestor present. How are you going to save him? Pooh! After King Langu was pushed back by the martial lord, he spat out a mouthful of blood and said, Mr. Yi, I appreciate your kindness, but this has nothing to do with you. You should run for your life. Obviously, even he felt that it was impossible. Yi Chen ignored everyone's reaction. Instead, he looked at the lady in black steadily. I'll ask you one last time. Do you still mean what you said earlier? The lady in black wanted to speak by instinct, but she nodded when she met Yi Chen's deep eyes. Very well, I hope we can cooperate happily. A smile finally appeared on Yi Chen's calm face. He then let go of the former's hand gently. Follow behind me. No one can hurt you today. After saying that, he slowly turned around to look at Ma Zhennan and the others. Brat, you're really courting death. The eyes of the corpse immortal sex martial emperor, Shan Shiha, turned cold. Then, he took a step forward and his sleeves seemed to suddenly expand. I'm going to refine you into a poisonous man and make you regret being born into this world. Shan Shiha waved his sleeves that looked like black dragons and attacked Yi Chen with a ferocious expression. Corpse energy swept out from the two expanding sleeves. The corpse energy was monstrous and enveloped the entire place. Even the expressions of the other martial emperors changed. If anyone below the martial emperor realm were to come into contact with this corpse energy, they would immediately be sliced into a pool of pus and blood. Be careful. This is the corpse immortal sex 5 poison corpse energy. You must not come into contact with it. The lady in black's expression changed as she hurriedly reminded. Yi Chen's eyes were clear. He did not move at all. He merely extended his right hand and pressed down lightly. Rumble. A terrifying might suddenly erupted in the entire space, as if Mount Tai was falling. Bang! Under everyone's gaze, Shan Shiha let out a blood-curdling scream. His body exploded with a loud bang, creating a bloody mist. Even his soul was destroyed. Everyone's bodies stiffened and remained motionless as if they had been petrified. Their expressions from before were still frozen on their faces and lingered for a long time. Lu Fei and Xue Ying were stunned. The lady in black widened her eyes, unable to believe her eyes. One palm. A single palm had killed a martial emperor. This brat hid his strength. He's an emperor stage body cultivator. A few seconds later, an extremely shocked voice came from a martial emperor's mouth. Everyone was shocked when they heard that. Emperor stage body cultivator. Wasn't it impossible for body cultivators to become emperors and could only stay below the emperor stage for the rest of their lives? Why would an emperor stage body cultivator appear? Ma Zhennan, who was in the crowd, forcefully suppressed the palpitation in his heart. He took a deep breath and said, May I know who this fellow is? This matter concerns the acting king's plan. I hope you won't interfere. Obviously, Yi Chen's domineering attack had shocked everyone. Even Ma Zhennan had to take a step back. That's right. The sword-wielding old man from the Bright Sword Pavilion said slowly, As long as you don't interfere, we can let you leave safely. We'll even put in a good word for you in front of the acting king. Who knows? We might even bestow you with glory and wealth. The acting king, Lu Mingyue, was the 5-jeweled prince of a major dynasty. He controlled half of the world's troops, and he could be said to have suppressed the major sections. Anyone who heard his name would be shocked. That was the reason why they mentioned the acting king's identity. They wanted to intimidate Yi Chen and make him retreat. However, Yi Chen smirked coldly. Acting king? Even if the Emperor of Heaven descends today, I'll protect you. With that, he took a step forward and charged at a few of them. Ma Zhennan flew into a rage and said with a ferocious expression, Let's attack together and kill him. Rumble, the 5 martial emperors, including Ma Zhennan, and the remaining 10 pseudo-emperors attacked together, causing the entire hall to shake and show signs of collapse. Die for me. The scabbard behind the sword-wielding old man from the Bright Sword Pavilion shook. As the sword hummed, a sword gleam slashed at Yi Chen directly. Senior Yi, be careful, Lu Fei said by instinct. However, Yi Chen did not do anything else. He merely glanced at the other party, and a gleam flashed through his deep eyes. Ah, The sword-wielding old man screamed and fell from the sky with a thud. His body did not move at all, and only his eyes were wide open, filled with fear. Another martial emperor had died. Everyone was shocked. Where did this monster come from? Let this old man fight you. Rumble, as a monstrous pressure and energy surged. It was like a violent ocean sweeping across the place. It was the martial ancestor who had attacked. End of this chapter. Chapter 1073. Young man, I don't care who you are. If you dare to obstruct the acting king's plan today, you deserve to die. The old man in black glared angrily. He opened his mouth and spat out a ray of green light. As soon as the green light appeared, it caused the surrounding space to collapse. Then, it slashed at Yi Chen's head in an extremely domineering manner. If one took a closer look, they would realize that it was a scimitar. It was covered in green energy and was extremely sharp. As expected of a martial ancestor realm expert, Ma Jinnan and the rest were surprised and delighted when they saw this. Their eyes were filled with deep respect. Oh no! King Langya Lu Qingzhou let out a long roar when he saw this. He forcefully held on and tried to block the attack. However, he was still too slow. Clang! The green clothes slashed at Yi Chun in the blink of an eye. Then sparks shot everywhere. However, to everyone's shock, the green light did not cause any harm to Yi Chen's body. Instead, it shattered and turned into countless streams of light that scattered everywhere. How is this possible? The old man's expression changed drastically. His attack was a breath of energy that had been hidden in his body for over 100 years. It was extremely powerful and sharp. Even a martial ancestor realm expert would not dare to take it head-on. However, it could not hurt Yi Chun. Oh no, I can't defeat this person. Almost at that moment, this thought flashed through the old man's mind. Without another word, he turned around and was about to leave. It was very decisive. Trying to run after acting cool, Yi Chun smirked in disdain. He extended his hand and slapped the old man in black from afar. Rumble. It was as if the mountains were collapsing and the earth was splitting apart. Everyone was on the verge of losing their balance. As the void distorted, an invisible spatial millstone condensed. The huge spatial millstone rotated with a thunderous rumble, directly crushing the former in an incomparably domineering manner. The old man in black was directly crushed by the huge millstone. He screamed miserably, and then blood dripped down from the void. There was also a storage bag that fell to the ground. A martial ancestor realm expert was dead. Dead silence. The hall was dead silent. That was a Wu zone. Even in the great dynasties, he would be considered a top expert and was destined to be fought over by various forces. But he died just like that. Plop. How is this possible? How is this possible? On the ground, Ma Jinnan and the others fell to the ground. Their faces were filled with shock and deathly pale. Am I dreaming? Lu Fei stared blankly at the scene, almost unable to believe it. Senior, the lady in black froze. She stared blankly at Yi Chun through the veil. He really did it. Yi Chun ignored the people's expression. His cold gaze eventually landed on Ma Jinnan and the rest. Spare me, spare me. Ma Jinnan and the others shuddered and repeatedly kowtowed, feeling incomparably terrified in their hearts. Mr. Yi, please spare their lives. At that moment, King Langya struggled to get up from the ground and said weakly, they know the acting king's plan. For the sake of the great dynasties, you can't kill them. At that moment, his long hair had turned white, and his pitch-black face was as old as withered tree bark. It was extremely difficult for him to even speak. Clearly, the forceful movement had caused the poison to spread throughout his body. Coupled with the forceful burning of his life force, he was on the verge of death. Lu Fei hurriedly pounced over and held him tightly. She sobbed, "Father!" King Langya trembled with difficulty. He moved slowly to Yi Chun and knelt down heavily. I thank him, Mr. Yi, for saving the Empress Dowager and my daughter. Senior Yi, can my father still be saved? Lu Fei's tears flowed uncontrollably. At this moment, Xue Ying walked over with a sorrowful expression. The poison has attacked his heart, and his life is at its end. Even if my master is here, there's nothing he can do. Lu Fei's face turned extremely pale when she heard that. The lady in black cried. Lu Fei's family. At that moment, Yichen spoke slowly and said calmly, "Who said that I can't save him?" "Senior Yi, what did you say? Why, you can really save my father." Lu Fei looked at him in surprise and joy. Shui Ying was shocked. Yichen lifted his head to look at Shui Ying and said without answering his question, "Do you dare to circulate your energy to protect his heart meridian?" The poison had attacked King Langia's heart. Only by using true energy and magic power to suppress the poison might he have a chance of survival. However, his true energy had yet to recover, so he could only place his hopes on Shui Ying, the Emperor Stage cultivator. "Why not? It's worth it to exchange Shui Ying's life for your highness's." Shui Ying laughed and immediately sat down cross-legged. He placed his hands on King Langia's back and forcefully circulated his energy to protect the latter's heart meridian. Yichen turned around and walked over. He picked up the old man's storage bag and opened it. He found more than 10 spirit stones inside. Moreover, they were all low-grade spirit stones with impurities. He frowned and turned to look at Ma Jinnan and the rest who were kneeling on the ground. "Hand over your storage bags." As soon as he said that, Ma Jinnan and the rest took out their storage bags immediately. Yichen opened them one by one and only took out 10 spirit stones. "I need to recover. Don't disturb me," Yichen instructed and sat down cross-legged. He held the spirit stone in his hand and started absorbing it quickly. Under everyone's shocked gazes, the spirit stone in his hand turned black in an instant before turning into dust and dispersing with the wind. Ma Jinnan and the rest were shocked when they saw that dual cultivation of magic and martial arts. So, this person is a dual cultivation of magic and martial arts. Thinking to this point, they gave up on the idea of sneak attacking Yichen while he was cultivating. The lady in black and Lu Fei stared at them warily, afraid that they would attack. "What are you looking at? Are you trying to sneak an attack on my daddy?" Meng Meng placed her hands on her hips and glared at Ma Jinnan and the rest angrily. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Yichen had completely absorbed the 20-odd spirit stones. He opened his eyes slowly. There are too many impurities in these spirit stones. Over 20 spirit stones had only allowed him to recover his true origin energy to stage 5 chi refinement. It seemed like the amount of spirit stones he needed to recover to nascent soul was terrifying. Seeing him open his eyes, Lu Fei asked carefully, "Mr. Yi, how are you?" Yichen did not say anything and walked straight to King Langia. At that moment, there was a trace of black energy wrapped around Shui Ying's face. It was obvious that he had been poisoned, but he was still struggling. Yichen placed his hand on King Langia's heart directly. As his true origin energy surged, he exerted force in his palm and sucked the poison in the other party's body into his own body. End of this chapter. Chapter 1074. The terrifying thing about poison was that it could harm a person's body, especially the most vulnerable parts like the internal organs. However, Yichen's body was powerful, so he was naturally unafraid of the so-called poison. He could destroy the poison within a moment. Everyone noticed that the poison on King Langia's face was disappearing at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the end, there were no signs of poisoning at all. Such a technique. Shui Ying was shocked as he watched from the side. He had lived for most of his life, but this was the first time he had seen someone who was not afraid of poison. "Take this antidote pill." Yichen opened his storage ring and tossed a medicinal pill to Shui Ying. Then, he took out a rebirth pill and fed it to King Langia. "Mr. Yi, how's my father?" Lu Fei was extremely nervous. "I've neutralized the poison in his body. His life is hanging by a thread. He won't die." Yichen secretly shook his head. "All I need to do now is replenish his life force." "Life force?" The lady in black's heart skipped a beat when she heard that. She said, "May I know what you need me for, Mr. Yi?" After the danger earlier, she did not dare to act arrogantly in front of Yichen anymore. At the same time, she was extremely grateful to Yichen. "You just need to keep your promise to me." Yichen glanced at her and said to Lu Fei, "Help your father down to rest. Prepare a pill furnace and a secret room for me. I need to refine pills." 2 hours later, in the training room of the Langya Palace. I've only recovered to golden core after using up all the medicinal pills and herbs in my storage ring. Yi Chun sat cross-legged and shook his head secretly when he sensed the true origin energy fluctuations in his dantian. I should have prepared more if I knew this would happen. Fortunately, the Empress Dowager of this dynasty promised to give me spirit stones. I'm sure I'll be able to recover to nascent soul with a single spirit stone. His eyes shone with a strange light. He was not worried that the young Empress Dowager would go back on her word. He could save them, and he could kill them too, even if he had to become enemies. Thinking to this point, he moved and appeared in the main hall of the palace. Lu Fei, the lady in black, Shui Ying, and the rest were already waiting by the side. King Langya bowed to Yi Chun solemnly. "Thank you for saving my life, Mr. Yi. These are scarlet pills. There are 5 of them, and each of them can restore 5 years of your vitality." Yi Chun flicked his finger, and a bottle of red medicinal pills landed in his hand. King Langya was overjoyed. Yi Chun said again, "I only promised to cure you of the poison. I didn't include this. Therefore, your residence has to compensate me for the medicinal herbs I used." Of course, this humble king will order someone to open the treasury for Mr. Langya to use. King Langya nodded. Yi Chun said again, "Where are those pieces of trash?" Lu Fei clapped her hands, and someone immediately escorted Ma Zhennan and the others into the room. When they saw Lu Fei, they immediately kowtowed. "You guys go out first." Yi Chun looked at Lu Fei and the rest. Although everyone was puzzled, they didn't ask much and left tactfully. Yi Chun took out the 8-divisional pagoda directly and converted Ma Zhennan and the rest by force. Yi Chun said calmly as he looked at them who were standing aside respectfully, "I'll give you guys a day to return to your sects and hand over all the spiritual stones and medicinal herbs." That night, in an incomparably grand courtyard in Daizhou thousands of kilometers away, a man in a dragon robe sat in front of a quiet pool, holding a golden fishing rod in his hand. A man in a dragon robe sat in front of the pool, holding a golden threaded fishing rod in his hand. He was surrounded by countless experts with powerful auras, but no one dared to make sound. Puffed, puffed. At this moment, the fishing rod in the man's hand began to tremble, as if something was struggling underwater. Tap, tap, tap. At the same time, a series of hurried footsteps could be heard. A man rushed in quickly and knelt on one knee. "Acting King, there's been a change in Langya County." With that, he took out a letter tube and handed it over respectfully with both hands. Then a maidservant took it and looked at it. Only then did she walk to the man in the dragon robe and whisper a few words into his ear. The man in the dragon robe paused for a moment before saying expressionlessly, "Drag him out and behead him." The moment that was said, the expression of the man kneeling on the ground changed drastically. "Acting King, spare me, spare me." However, before he could resist, several powerhouses landed on the ground and forcefully brought him out. Not long after, a head was sent over. Facing the bloody head, the man in the dragon robe ignored it. Instead, he lifted the fishing rod in his hand, and the hook was empty. "The fish that was in my hands has escaped." The man in the dragon robe narrowed his eyes, making it hard to tell what he was feeling. However, his tone shocked everyone. The woman beside him said considerately, "Your Highness, King Langya has long been crippled. With his ability, there's no way he can deal with Ma Zhennan and the rest. There must be an outsider involved. In my opinion, it's better to send Elder Yu to investigate." Approved. The man in the dragon robe spoke slowly with an expressionless face. At the same time, order someone to contact the other 7 kings. "We'll send troops at noon in 3 days. It's time for the world to change its master." In a palace in Chuzhou, as an eagle flapped its wings and flew south, a dignified order was issued. Order Monk Ku to go to Langya County. Such an order seemed to have been issued from more than 10 counties in the 4 prefectures of the Great Zhou dynasty at the same time. In Yuzhou, less than 1,000 li away from Langya County, on a dragon boat, A middle-aged man dressed like a scholar looked at the report in his hand and smiled faintly. Second brother, your news is still not as smooth as mine. The current Empress Dowager has traveled tens of thousands of li to Yuzhou at night and is now in Langya County. The scholarly man gently held the report in his hand and was full of ambition. Second brother, previously because you had the support of the Qing kingdom, I had to rely on you. But now, the Empress Dowager is a chance given to me by the heavens. In this world, Old 8 also wants to sit on it. Boom! The report in his hand suddenly turned into a ball of fire, and his expression suddenly turned cold. Pass my order. Order the northern barbarians to move out and destroy Langya County. I want to see the Empress Dowager in one piece before daybreak. In the capital of the great Zhou dynasty, Longjing, I want to see Mother. I want to see Mother, a young man wearing a dragon robe, no more than 6 feet tall, knelt outside the Empress Dowager's palace. His knees were bleeding. Mother. In front of him stood a dozen or so palace maids. The leading nanny sighed and said, Your Majesty, the Empress Dowager is unwell and refuses to see guests. You should come back another day. How dare you? His Majesty is the Empress Dowager's son. You dare to stop him? Are you not afraid of death? With a loud roar, a burly man in armor led dozens of soldiers and galloped over. Into this chapter. Chapter 1075. The nanny's expression changed slightly when she saw the person, but she still said forcefully, General Jean, this is the Empress Dowager's palace. Even His Majesty needs us to inform him. Are you trying to barge in? I suspect that you have kidnapped the Empress Dowager and are plotting something. I must go in and search to protect the Empress Dowager. The golden-armored man's expression was cold. He took a step forward and said, If you don't move, I'll kill you all on the spot. Boom, boom, boom. A dozen or so palace maids dashed out from the bedchambers and faced off against several dozen imperial insignia guards. Cough, 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 cough. At this critical moment, an intense coughing sound was faintly heard from afar. Then, a slightly hunched old man in a purple robe walked over slowly with a horsetail whisk in his hand. Greetings, Grand Tutor. At that moment, everyone, including the golden-armored man and the nanny, knelt on one knee. The young man in the royal robe looked as if he had seen his savior. Grand Tutor, I want to see my mother. Cough, cough, cough. The old man in the robe covered his mouth and coughed. Your Majesty, why do you want to see the Empress Dowager? I had a nightmare. I'm scared of ghosts. The young man in the royal robe sounded weak. The golden-armored man on the ground pursed his lips, and a hint of disdain flashed in his eyes. Your Majesty, this is the palace. It contains the fortune of our dynasty for thousands of years and is protected by the previous emperors. The old man in the robe sighed. Any evil will retreat. How can there be ghosts? Then he walked over and gently helped the young man in the royal robe up. Follow me back. The Empress Dowager is not feeling well. You can come and see her in 3 days. The young man in the royal robe did not dare to disagree. The golden-armored man watched the old man and the young man leave. Suddenly, a piece of cloth floated in front of him. He picked it up subconsciously and saw that there were scarlet bloodstains on it. He immediately said, Grand Tutor, you dropped something? The old man in the robe stopped and slowly turned around. He looked at the golden-armored man who had a strange look in his eyes and suddenly said, General Jean, do you still remember your father's ambition? The golden-armored man's body trembled. When he looked up again, he realized that the old man in front of him had already left. In a dojo at the back mountain of the imperial palace, the old man in the Taoist robe stood with his hands clasped behind his back. His figure was frail as he looked at the palace from afar. Tears welled up in the corners of his eyes. Late Emperor, I don't have much time left. Our great sex court has been corrupt for a long time. In addition, the young master is weak. The 8 kings all intend to rebel. We have millions of soldiers, and the enemy Qing kingdom is eager to move. Our great sect's 1,000-year foundation is shaky in the wind and rain. The old man coughed violently like an old man with one foot in the grave, but there was a hint of a smile in his eyes. I've spent my entire life studying the mysteries of heaven, and I have spent 20 years of my life to find a chance of survival for my sect." At this point, he knelt down heavily in front of the imperial mausoleum. "Please forgive this old official for letting the Empress Dowager take the risk alone. It's because the survival of the dynasty lies above the Empress Dowager's trip. The Emperor's star falls to the south, and the true dragon returns to the leaf. Late at night, Yu Province, King Langi Palace. In the darkness, there were countless killing intents, and the smell of blood almost filled the entire Langi County. Heads rolled and blood flowed. As King Langia recovered from his injuries, the entire Langia County was in a purge. Countless people with ulterior motives were killed. Yichen sat at the banquet that King Langia had arranged while carrying his daughter. He lowered his head and peeled oranges for his daughter. Sitting opposite him was the woman in black. She was still dressed in black, and she still wore a veil on her face. Even so, she was still spotless. However, the latter would look at Yi Chun and his daughter from time to time. When she looked at Meng Meng, there was a flash of love in her eyes. Shuang stayed by her side the entire time and did not say a word. Meanwhile, Yi Chun was not someone to talk to for no reason. At that moment, the atmosphere in the hall was a little awkward. After a while, the woman in black could not help but ask, "Mr. Yi, why haven't I seen your wife?" It could be said that the Empress Dowager was most curious about Yi Chun now. When she first saw Yi Chun, she thought that he was just a pseudo-emperor stage body cultivator. If not for King Langia, why would she lower her status to beg Yi Chun? However, when the Bright Sword Pavilion and the other three sects rebelled, Yi Chun resolved the crisis for her in an extremely domineering manner under such a dangerous situation. Those who had never experienced the ups and downs and the state of mind of escaping death would not be able to understand it. Especially Yi Chun's decisive style of doing things. It shocked her deeply. Therefore, she could not help but be curious about Yi Chun's identity. At the end of the day, she was just a woman who had just turned 20. "My wife isn't here," Yi Chun replied by instinct. Subsequently, he seemed to have thought of something and lifted his head to look at the woman. "If you can return to the palace safely, can you do me a favor? Mr. Yi, please tell me." "I can do it. I'll definitely do it," the woman in black said in a clear voice. "I've been separated from my wife. I don't know where she is now. I came out this time to look for her." Yi Chun said slowly, "Your dynasty is considered an overlord in the north. Naturally, I can't compare to your power. Therefore, I want you to help me ask around." This was also one of the reasons why he saved her. After all, he was unfamiliar with the ancient barren world. "This doesn't count as help. When I return to the capital, I'll get someone to investigate for you." The lady in black nodded and said hesitantly, "May I ask how many wives Mr. Yi has?" "Just one," Yi Chun said. The former could not help but take another look at Yi Chun after hearing that. An outstanding person like Mr. Yi only married one woman. He's quite devoted. She didn't mean anything by asking this. After all, in the ancient barren world, men often had multiple wives and concubines, let alone a powerhouse like Yi Chun. At this time, the little fellow who was eating suddenly said, "Auntie, many women like my daddy. Is that so?" The woman in black was caught off guard and didn't know how to respond to her words. "Of course." The little fellow raised her chin and said proudly, "There are many women who like my father, but my father doesn't dare to accept them. Because if daddy finds another woman, mommy will put her on the washboard." Yi Chun could not help but cough when he heard that. He gave her a knock on the head. "Kids, don't talk nonsense." "That's right." The little girl took a hit and said aggrievedly, "Last time, I secretly saw you kneeling on the washboard." Yi Chun was almost angered to death. On the other hand, the lady in black's eyes lit up. She said in surprise, "Men don't kneel to the sky or the ground. They only kneel to their parents and kings." "What's this washboard?" It actually made Mr. Yi bend his back for it. "That's right." The little fellow was about to speak. His expression changed drastically as he said, "Empress Dowager, I've just received news that there's an army from the east of Yuzhou heading towards Langia County. P.S. Chapter 4, updated today. Another 4 chapters. Bosses, please give me monthly votes and recommendation votes. I'll update first before making up for it. Okay?" End of this chapter. Chapter 1076. In the Langya Palace, the lanterns flickered. Lu Qingjia, what did you say? The woman in black stood up in shock. There's an army heading towards Langya County right now. King Langya knelt on one knee. Empress Dowager, the spies I've planted in Serenity Province have reported that an hour ago, an army from the east of Serenity Province was marching towards Langya County. At this point, his tone was a little low. According to the news, this army has no less than 5,000 people, and they are all riding on earth dragons. As soon as that was said, the woman in black fell heavily to the ground. Shui Ying's expression changed. Only Yi Chun remained silent. Yu Zhou is the Ghost King's fief. Even he has to report to the imperial court for such an army to gather. Shui Ying said with a gloomy expression. And now that he's secretly mobilizing the army at night, could it be that he's targeting you, Your Highness? That's not what I'm worried about. King Langya took a deep breath in and said word by word, what I'm worried about is that your whereabouts have been leaked, Empress Dowager. Otherwise, the Ghost King wouldn't have reacted so intensely. King Langya vaguely knew about the Ghost King's rebellion. However, for a long time, Langya County and Yuzhou had always minded their own business. Now that there was an army from Yuzhou suddenly attacking Langya County, the only explanation was that the Empress Dowager's whereabouts had been leaked. As soon as he finished speaking, the woman in black's body trembled slightly. The Ghost King. She knew about this vassal king who had been in theft. He was an extremely shrewd person. Although he supported the imperial court on the surface, he was secretly in contact with the acting king. Most importantly, the Ghost King was lustful and had defiled countless women. Once she fell into his hands, the consequences, how dare the Ghost King? Shui Ying clenched his fists and said coldly, you have to know that in order to control the infeft vassal kings, the imperial court has set up the position of inspector. The inspector's duty is to supervise and control the vassal kings. Isn't the Ghost King afraid that the inspector will? Before he could finish, Yi Chan said calmly, I'm afraid the inspector of Yuzhou has already switched sides. Mr. Yi is right. King Langya nodded slowly and said, furthermore, I'm guessing that the army this time is not from Yuzhou, but from the northern barbarians. Northern barbarians? Yi Chen was surprised. Mr. Yi, you might not know this, but there are many foreign clans within our great sect's territory, and the northern barbarians are the most powerful. As if sensing his confusion, King Langya explained, because the northern barbarians live in bitter cold lands, the forests are filled with miasma, and they are very good at riding horses and setting traps. Our sect has been unable to completely exterminate them for so many years. He paused for a moment before continuing. The eastern part of the Serenity Province is a branch of the northern barbarians known as the Fire Barbarian Clan. They're extremely good at controlling fire. If it's the northern barbarian army, then the situation is more serious. Lu Fei's tone was heavy. First of all, it shows that the Ghost King and the northern barbarians are in cahoots. Secondly, I heard that a heavenly barbarian has appeared in the northern barbarians recently. I'm afraid that only the martial king can contend against him. As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere in the room suddenly became heavy. The cultivation realms of the ancient barren world were acquired stage, Khanate stage, Grandmaster stage, Emperor stage, Grandmaster stage, King stage, and finally the legendary Martial Saint stage. Martial King, that was the realm closest to Martial Saint. In the entire northern region, the number of Martial Kings could be counted on one hand. Only the current Imperial Advisor had such combat strength. Martial King. Shui Ying felt a sharp pain in his throat as he said with difficulty, doesn't that mean that we have no chance of survival? The northern barbarians in the eastern part of the Serenity Province are less than 2,000 kilometers away from Langya County. The northern barbarian army has earth dragons to travel, so they only need 4 hours to arrive. Lu Fei smiled bitterly. Mr. Yi, are you a martial ancestor stage powerhouse? King Langya suddenly looked at Yi Chan. I guess so. Yi Chan nodded lightly. He did not know the cultivation system of the ancient barren world, but judging from the martial ancestor he killed earlier, his combat strength was definitely above that of a martial ancestor stage. Plop. Subsequently, King Langya suddenly knelt before Yi Chun and said sincerely, "Mr. Yi, I've never knelt before anyone in my life. I have to beg you for something now. Please protect the Empress Dowager back to the capital." He looked at Yi Chun with a pleading expression. "The Empress Dowager's safety concerns the fate of our sect. Once she dies, our sect will definitely fall apart. The feudal lords will fight, and the people will be in dire straits. I'm begging you for the people of this world." With that, he pressed his head heavily against the ground. Yi Chun did not say a word. He did not want to interfere with the internal conflicts of the sect, because it would implicate many karma. It might even slow down the pace of his search for Su Yuhan. Plop! Lu Fei knelt down heavily as well. Lu Fei begs Mr. Yi to escort the Empress Dowager back to the capital. "I'm willing to serve you as a slave." Plop! Shuiying knelt down as well. "Mr. Yi, Shuiying has been cultivating with my master all my life. The sect is Shuiying's home. Shuiying can't bear to see the country destroyed and the people suffer. Please." The woman in black did not say a word when she saw that. However, her phoenix-like eyes that were hidden under the veil were filled with tears. "The late emperor, did you see that the sect was facing internal and external troubles, and the kings were about to rebel, yet they still had such a loyal minister?" A few seconds later, she bent her legs slightly and knelt before Yi Chun gently. "Mr. Yi, I'm not afraid of death. I'm only afraid that I'll let down the late emperor's last wish and the people of this world." "Empress Dowager." King Langya looked sad. Even Yi Chun was shocked. He did not expect the dignified Empress Dowager to lower her status and kneel to him. He wanted to reject her, but he realized that his shoulders suddenly felt heavy. He took a deep breath in and said slowly, "The sect must do 3 things for me in the future." "Thank you, Mr. Yi." The woman in black kowtowed heavily. "Get up." Yi Chun waved his sleeves and lifted his head to look out of the hall. He frowned slightly. "Since the enemy is already on the way, we need to leave as soon as possible." "Mr. Yi, I've already calculated the itinerary." King Langya said, "The northern barbarian army is coming from the east, and the north is the border of Yuzhou. Therefore, you can only go west and cross the Longyuan River. Moreover, you can't bring too many people. Otherwise, it'll be easy for news to leak." At this point, he continued, "Therefore, Mr. Yi only needs to bring the Empress Dowager, my daughter, and Shuiying." "Father, what about you?" Lu Fei asked. King Langya shook his head slightly. "Langya County is a fief given to me by the late emperor. How can I abandon it? Therefore, I've decided to stay in Langya County." "But," Lu Fei still wanted to say something. As if sensing her worry, the former smiled faintly. "Don't worry. The Ghost King and the northern barbarians won't dare to do anything to me unless they're determined to break ties with the imperial court. Go, all of you go." End of this chapter. Chapter 1077. That night, 3:45 in the morning, a giant black bird that was more than 50 feet in size flew across the sky above King Langya's mansion, blending into the darkness. Lu Fei sat on the giant bird and caressed its feathers. "Uncle Pelican, we're counting on you this time." "Don't worry, Princess. I'm very fast. I'll only need half a day to reach the capital." The giant bird flapped its wings and sped away. Shuiying was surprised. "An Emperor Realm bird? Uncle Pelican is my father's good friend." Lu Fei introduced. "When my father was young, he fell off a cliff while practicing martial arts. It was Uncle Pelican who saved him. Just like my Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin wanted to eat me and Daddy back then." The little girl in Yi Chun's embrace reached out and stroked the giant bird's wings. Yi Chun patted her head with a smile. He found out that Xiao He was a beast during this trip to the ancient desolate realm. Meanwhile, the black-clothed woman silently turned around, and she gazed silently at the Langya estate that was moving further and further away from them. After that, she silently knelt down. A stream of tears slowly flowed down her cheeks. Yi Chun secretly shook his head. Obviously, even she could faintly guess what it meant for King Langya to stay behind, although Yi Chun could tell with a glance. However, he did not stop them. Everyone had their own beliefs, and their own choices. The only thing he could do was to fulfill his promise. Time slowly passed, and the atmosphere became silent. None of them were in a good mood. Some were worried about the future, like the woman in black, and some were reluctant to leave home, like Liu Fei. Yichen glanced at his daughter, who was gradually falling asleep in his arms, and lifted his head to look at the night sky. His emotions gradually drifted into the distance. He did not know where Su Yuhan and his parents were. Was it in the northern region? Or in the eastern wilderness, the southern region, the western desert, or the central plains? He knew that it was useless for him to be anxious. The only thing he could do was to start searching in the northern region. He would find it one day, after they had been flying for an hour. Langia County, Langia Palace. The entire prince's mansion was in a state of tranquility. Not a single light could be seen, and not a single person could be seen. King Langia Lu Qingzhou stood in the courtyard with no one beside him. He murmured, "Fei, this farewell between us father and daughter might be our last. In this life, the only people I owe are your mother and you. Unfortunately, your father was greatly favored by the late emperor, so I can only repay you with my death. Go far away." He looked up at the western horizon, and his expression seemed to be filled with sorrow and reluctance, but it was mostly filled with determination. Hoo-hoo! Just at this moment, a few gusts of wind faintly blew over from the courtyard, causing many fallen leaves to be lifted up. "Since you're here, come out." King Langia didn't even raise his head, his expression completely unchanged. As soon as he finished speaking, an old voice resounded in the courtyard. "As expected of King Langia, you actually guessed that we would come." The next moment, 5 figures landed on the ground at the same time. One of them was holding a sword, one was dressed like an elegant scholar, and one was a sloppy old man carrying a wine pot. However, even with the appearance of these 5 people, the falling leaves in the air did not change their trajectory at all. 5 wuzongs. King Langia laughed heartily. "How can I, Lu Qingzhou, make 5 wuzongs descend? It seems that King Chu, King Dai, and the others can't wait any longer." A gloomy man stepped forward and squinted at the former. "Your injury is actually healed? It seems that the information is true. There must be an outsider involved. Otherwise, with your ability, how could you delay until now to cure the poison?" Another middle-aged scholar with a folding fan said. "Lu Qingzhou, hand over the person behind you, and we may spare your life, and your Langia palace will be spared." Ha ha ha! Facing such an existence, King Langia laughed loudly. "You 5 dogs, what right do you have to negotiate with me? When the late emperor was still alive, you were like stray dogs, living in fear all day long. Now that the late emperor is gone, you all jump out. You still dare to speak so shamelessly even when you're about to die." One of them sneered. "Why bother talking nonsense with him? Capture him, and use the soul-searching technique on him. Then we'll know what we want." The few of them were about to rush over. "Wait, something's not right." The man with the folding fan frowned. "Why is there no one else in such a huge palace? Oh no, there's the smell of gunpowder. Damn it, there's gunpowder buried here." In practically an instant, the expressions of the 5 of them changed in unison. Their figures flashed, and they intended to tear through the sky without saying a word. King Langia's sneering face suddenly had a hint of ruthlessness. "Since you're here, you should at least leave something behind, right?" The next moment, a fireball landed at his feet. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The entire Langia palace was instantly engulfed in a deafening explosion, as if the mountains were collapsing and the earth was cracking. The commotion was so loud that even from 10 miles away, one could still see the huge fireball soaring into the sky. When the fire dissipated, 5 figures landed about a mile away from the Langia king's mansion. An old man's entire arm was blown off, and his hair was disheveled. This bastard buried gunpowder in advance. Damn it, I'm going to exterminate his entire family. Damn it, with his death, wouldn't there be no news of the Empress Dowager's whereabouts? Right at this moment, the expression of one of them changed greatly. As his voice fell, the rest of the people were completely enraged. "What did you say? The Empress Dowager also came to Langia County? Pass down my order." Gather all the experts above the martial emperor realm and search all the way north. Even if you have to dig 3 feet into the ground, you must find him. Order the capital's garrison and city defense forces to set up a checkpoint 50 li away from the capital. Mobilize 100,000 soldiers and scatter them 100 li away. Don't let even a mosquito enter. Order the Swift Lightning Sword sect, the Tianluo sect, the Soul Devourer Guild, and the True Martial sect to mobilize all their elites. If any of them slack off, their sects will be destroyed. In almost an hour, orders were issued from the 5 provinces of the major dynasties. At the same time, within the Qing kingdom, an imperial edict was sent out. I order the military advisor to take 300,000 soldiers to the border of the Qing kingdom. They can only stand against each other, not fight. Whether or not our great sect can perish without a fight will be decided tonight. On the southern border of the major dynasties, Huxiong Pass, beyond the massive city wall, as far as the eye could see, there were endless torches, and a murderous aura stretched dozens of li into the sky. The soldiers guarding the pass waited solemnly. Their faces were filled with nervousness because what they saw was people, an endless number of people. The enemy country, the Qing kingdom, had mobilized 300,000 soldiers to guard the pass in the middle of the night. With such a lineup, were they going to fight a war? And it was in this kind of atmosphere that, among the enemy country's army outside the city, a beam of sword light suddenly rose into the sky and landed outside Huxiong Pass. End of this chapter. Chapter 1078. It was a middle-aged man in white who was stepping on a sword light. He was like a sword immortal who had descended to the mortal world. Even the armies of the 2 countries, which numbered close to 1 million, had to revere him. The foremost person of the Qing kingdom, Gu Jinxiu, the military advisor of the Qing kingdom, was known to be victorious in every battle. With his own strength, he had allowed the Qing kingdom to leap from a dynasty to the level of an imperial court. One of the top 5 experts in the northern region. The middle-aged man slowly looked at a certain corner in the pass and said with a faint smile, "Brother Qi, why don't you come out and meet me?" As soon as he said this, 300,000 people couldn't help but look at the top of the city wall. A few seconds later, a faint sigh sounded in the void. Then a thin old man in a purple Taoist robe slowly walked out. "State Preceptor!" At this moment, the soldiers of the great sect shouted in unison, "Imperial Advisor, Qi Tiandao, the stabilizing force of the major dynasties." The old man in the Taoist robe staggered until he was less than 100 feet away from the middle-aged man. He slowly stopped and stared at the latter. "What's the difference between seeing him or not? I still have to meet him." The middle-aged man smiled faintly. "After all, 300,000 soldiers of the Qing kingdom have come to invade tonight. How can you sit back and relax? You don't dare to fight." The old man in Taoist robes coughed repeatedly. He stared at the former and said with absolute certainty, "The Qing kingdom cannot afford to fight. His Majesty didn't let me fight in the first place." The middle-aged man said calmly, "His Majesty also said that we only need to hold back Brother Qi, which is better than holding back your 1,000,000-strong army. What's the point?" The old man in the Taoist robe sighed. "Since we have nothing better to do, why don't we have a game?" The middle-aged man waved his sleeve and a chessboard appeared in the air. He chuckled and said, "Fellow Taoist Qi, I think you won't refuse this request of mine, right?" Without saying a word, the old man in Taoist robes grabbed through the air and sucked a black chess piece onto the chessboard. The other party was right. Indeed, he could not refuse. Tonight, the 300,000 soldiers of the Qing kingdom were guarding the pass. Their goal was to restrain him and make the killing within the country a foregone conclusion. Even if he knew the other party's goal, but he still couldn't refuse, because he was the state preceptor of a major dynasty. After the middle-aged man put down a white chess piece, he said with a faint smile, "Brother Qi, your blood and Qi are deficient, and you won't be able to live for long. Recently, His Majesty obtained an immortal medicine. As long as you are willing to forsake the darkness and seek the light, you can extend your lifespan by another 60 years. It's an immortal medicine, yet can only increase lifespan by 60 years. How can it be called an immortal medicine? The old man in the Taoist robe was extremely calm. In this world, there are people who live, and there are people who die. There are flowers that bloom, and there are flowers that wither. This is the heavenly Tao, and it is the principle of nature. Why should I be entangled in living an ignoble life? What a pity, the middle-aged man sighed. You've protected the sect for over 1,000 years, but you still can't change the outcome. After tonight, your sect will fall into endless internal strife. That's not necessarily true, the Taoist-robed old man smiled. What, fellow Taoist Chi, don't tell me you still have some hidden tricks up your sleeves? The middle-aged man said non-committally, your sect is strong in martial arts and weak in literature, and disasters occur one after another. In addition, the 8 kings are madly sucking the blood of your sect. Just a 20-year-old girl and a 10-year-old young emperor cannot change this. Even in this situation, if the Qing kingdom wants to completely destroy your sect, it will still take some time. After he put down a chess piece, he raised his eyes to look at the other person. But what a pity, you made a wrong move. You actually let the current Empress Dowager take the risk alone and go to a place surrounded by wolves. Since it's a game of chess, how can it be a wrong move? The old man in the Taoist robe's expression was calm. Naturally, it is to deal with the moves as they see them, and even to make risky moves. As the saying goes, heaven and earth are the chessboard, and all living beings are the chess pieces. Although you and I are playing a game of chess, have you ever thought that you and I are the chess pieces of someone else? Hearing this, the middle-aged man secretly frowned. Near the break of dawn, Long Yuan River. Above the rippling surface of the river, the sky gradually brightened. A giant bird flew low on the surface of the river, its speed becoming slower and slower. Feeling the giant bird's strength, Lu Fei said with heartache, Uncle Pelican, can you still hold on? I can still hold on. The giant bird said weakly, Princess, we're about to cross the Long Yuan River. We'll reach the capital in another 500 kilometers. That's great. Lu Fei was pleasantly surprised. As long as we return to the capital, the Empress Dowager will be safe. By then, we can think of a way to save my father. Yichen secretly shook his head when he heard that. Before he left, he had left a wisp of divine consciousness on King Langya. For hours ago, he dared to sense that the wisp of divine consciousness had dispersed. That meant, moreover, although everyone had been unobstructed along the way, the 8 kings were not fools. Although they did not know their route, they just needed to stop them on the path they had to take. As expected, as if to verify Yi Chen's guess, after the giant bird flew 150 kilometers forward, it saw countless eagles circling in the sky far away. The lady in black's pretty face changed slightly. Those are the eagles used by the army. They're the best at detecting auras. Why are there so many of them here? There's someone below. Xueting suddenly cried out. Everyone lowered their heads and saw that on the ground in the distance, there was a long black shadow that seemed to cover all directions. There was even the roar of ferocious beasts. There are at least 100,000 of them. Lu Fei's pretty face instantly turned pale. The lady in black smiled in despair. Looks like our whereabouts have been exposed. The 8 kings have sent people to intercept us here. She could not help but despair. This was the only way to the capital. Although they were flying high in the sky, there were still eagles monitoring the entire sky from afar. As long as they continued forward, they would definitely be discovered by the eagles, and they would become the target of public criticism. At this moment, everyone felt their bodies sway, and they realized that the giant bird beneath them was falling rapidly. The giant bird said weakly, Princess, I can't take it anymore. You guys should run for your lives. At the next moment, in the distance, several eagle cries sounded out one after another, and then a black mass of eagles flew towards everyone. In the blink of an eye, dense arrows tore through the sky like locusts. I found them. They're there. At the same time, countless shouts rang out. Then countless figures with powerful auras flew over. Shuang exclaimed, Oh no, we've been exposed. Quick, return quickly. Lu Fei panicked. At that moment, a calm voice rang in everyone's ears. No need. Mr. Yi. Lu Fei was confused. Yi Chan carried his daughter with one hand and freed up his other hand. He waved his sleeve and wrapped a few of them around him. He fell from the sky and landed heavily on the ground. Lu Fei was so anxious that she was about to cry. Mr. Yi, they're here. What should we do now? It's simple. There were two balls of golden flames jumping in Yi Chen's eyes. His calm voice was heard. Of course, we're going to kill them. P.S. The third chapter. There are only 3 chapters today. Please forgive me. End of this chapter. Chapter 1079. Of course we're going to kill them. Yi Chen's voice was neither loud nor soft. Lu Fei and the others were dead silent. Kill them. One had to know that they were facing an army of 100,000. Apart from that, there were also many experts from various sects who had defected to the 8 kings. There were no less than a dozen of them. There were only 5 of them, and one of them was a child. How could the 5 of them kill their way through? Is Mr. Yi crazy? This thought appeared in Lu Feng's mind almost at the same time. Even the woman in black and Shui Ying were no exception. Follow me closely. There's no need to attack. Just watch how I bring all of you safely to the capital city. Just when they were overwhelmed, Yi Chen's calm voice rang in their ears again. The next moment, they saw Yi Chen take a step forward while carrying the child. Instead of retreating, he took the initiative to charge at the crowd from afar. He didn't walk fast, as if he was taking a stroll in a park. His white hair was particularly eye-catching in the darkness of the night. His body was not considered sturdy, but the indescribable aura emitted from his body caused the anxious hearts of Lu Fei and the rest to suddenly calm down. The woman in black gritted her teeth and quickly followed. Fine, since Mr. Yi is so brave, why should I worry too much? There's no way out. Let's kill. Shuang took a deep breath and took a step forward. Lu Fei held on tightly to the giant bird that had turned into an old man. Her body trembled as she followed. Boom! Muffled thunder suddenly sounded in the sky, and dark clouds gathered at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a flash, it started to rain cats and dogs. Under the heavy rain, killing intent suddenly appeared, as if to wash away the blood that was about to come. Hoo-hoo! In a few breaths of time, several figures dashed over from afar. If one were to look carefully, they would discover that these people were all armored men. They were obviously fierce generals in the army. The strongest general under the acting king, Yuan Xin, Han Gai, the power overlord under the ghost king, King Chu's personal bodyguard, Chou Jinan, the greatest war criminal of Liang province, Situ Han, the prince of Yang's younger brother, Lu Xuanba. After seeing the other party's face, the black-clothed lady's expression changed slightly and her heart gradually sank. The 5 people in front of him were all fierce generals under the princes of Yuzhou, Daizhou, Chuzhou, Liang province, and Yongzhou province. Their battle prowess could be ranked in the top 10 even in the major dynasties. Most importantly, every single one of them was a supreme ancestor realm cultivator. Every single one of them could defeat an army of 1,000. Ha ha ha! Along with a loud laugh, a person walked over with large strides. Thanks to the substitute king's wisdom, he predicted that you would pass by this place. Otherwise, we would have missed a great opportunity to make a contribution. It was a general wearing a golden tiger armor, a scarlet flame-patterned helmet, and a tiger-headed golden spear in his hand. 2 blazing rays of light shot out from his eyes. The acting king's most ferocious general, Yuan Xin, was ranked 7th on the Northern Region's combat strength ranking, and was known as the minor martial saint. Yuan Xin, the black-clothed woman, stepped forward and said coldly, Your ancestors have been highly regarded by the imperial court for 3 generations, and the imperial court has never treated you unfairly. Now, you actually want to betray the country? Betray the country? Hearing this, Yuan Xin did not get angry. Instead, he laughed. Empress Dowager, after the substitute king ascends to the throne, it will still be a major dynasty. At this point, he squinted his eyes and looked at the black-clothed woman. On the other hand, Empress Dowager, you are just a weak woman. What qualifications do you have to supervise the affairs of the world? And that young emperor in the palace, what kind of tricks does he have to convince us? The black-clothed woman was so angry that her delicate body trembled. At this time, another general walked forward and said, "Empress Dowager, I advise you to be more obedient and follow us back. Otherwise, without eyes, we can't guarantee." He was Prince Yang's younger brother, Lu Xuanba. "Are you threatening me?" The woman in black said in a cold voice. "Don't forget, this place is less than 500 miles away from the capital city. There is also the Long Yao army that is loyal to me nearby. Aren't you afraid that General Guan will come with his troops?" And the imperial tutor, Shueting, faintly threatened. "General Guan? National preceptor?" King Chu's personal guard, Cho Jinan, sneered and said, "Empress Dowager, I'm afraid you don't know yet. But just as you were heading north, the enemy's Qin Kingdom's military advisor led 300,000 troops to seize our border at Huxiong Pass. The imperial advisor and General Guan have long been attracted there. It can be said that you have nowhere to go today." Hearing this, everyone fell into complete despair. At that moment, Yuan Shin finally noticed Yi Chun. He said while squinting, "Are you the brat who killed old Gu and escaped with the Empress Dowager?" As the 8 kings split up their forces to search for Yi Chun and the rest, the news about Yi Chun in Langya County was gradually discovered. The old Gu he was talking about was the martial master who died in Yi Chun's hands at the Langya King's mansion. "So what if I do? So what if I'm not?" Yi Chun said coldly. "The acting king has given another order. Anyone can live today, but you must die." A cold gleam flashed through Yuan Shin's eyes. He stomped his feet and soared into the sky. The tiger-headed golden spear in his hand tore through the air and charged at Yi Chun. Everyone realized that the tiger-headed golden spear in Yu Wenshuan's hand seemed to have transformed into a golden dragon that destroyed everything. "Remember, the person who killed you is Yuan Shin." Yuan Shin's cold voice was heard. "Mr. Yi." Lu Fei and the rest were on the verge of despair. They looked very nervous, not daring to look at everything before them. After all, Yuan Shin's combat strength was ranked 4th in this major dynasty. He was famous, completely unlike the martial master who died in Yi Chen's hands earlier. Yi Chen did not move at all. His expression was calm. At the same time, more and more people were gathering within a radius of dozens of kilometers. Among them were powerhouses from the sects and capable people that the 8 kings had gathered. When they saw that it was Yuan Shin who attacked, everyone chose to watch from the sidelines. After all, Yuan Shin's strength was obvious to all. Thunder rumbled in the sky. It caused everyone to close their eyes subconsciously. When they opened their eyes again, they realized that Yuan Shin, who was in the sky, had suddenly stopped moving. When everyone saw it clearly, they were all dumbfounded. Yi Chen extended his hand and grabbed Yuan Shin's tiger-headed golden spear gently. The extremely sharp spear could not move at that moment. It could not even pierce through his skin. "Why you are?" Yuan Shin's expression changed. Yi Chen exerted force with his fingers, and the tiger-headed golden spear shattered. Then, he slapped the former with his palm. Boom! Yuan Shin was slapped to death. Yuan Shin was slapped to death. His body was no longer humanoid and was in tatters. Then, it turned into a bloody mist under the terrifying shockwaves. The surroundings were dead silent. Everyone was in a daze, unable to believe what they had just seen. Yuan Shin, the peerless general under the acting king, who was ranked 7th in combat strength, was killed just like that. Chapter 1080. Boom, boom, boom. A few seconds later, the remaining 4 people closed in and surrounded Yi Chun. Prince Yang's brother, Li Xuanba, stared at Yi Chun and said fearfully, "Who exactly are you?" Although Yuan Shin's combat strength was at the bottom among them, he was still ranked 7th on the combat strength leaderboard. However, he was killed by Yi Chun so easily. In that case, how could Yi Chun be a nobody in the Great Zhou dynasty or even in northern region? Facing Li Xuanba's question, Yi Chun said slowly, "It doesn't matter who I am. What's important is that all of you will die today." As his voice fell, Li Xuanba and the rest were furious. "You only killed Yuan Shin. and you dare to boast so shamelessly. Kill him. Liang State's #1 war criminal. Sidu Han's voice was cold, and then he suddenly disappeared into thin air. Attack! The other three shouted and attacked at the same time. Rumble. The power that erupted from the four of them was incomparably violent. It rumbled, causing the space to distort violently and blur. I'm going to start a massacre today. Yi Chen's white hair fluttered in the wind. His expression was extremely cold, and killing intent surged in his eyes. Those who block me will die. As he spoke, he took a step forward. Die, brat. Sidu Han's figure appeared before Yi Chen like a ghost. Subsequently, a dazzling saber gleam suddenly exploded from his hand. Kacha! Lightning seemed to flash through the air. There were no words to describe this slash. The saber gleam was resplendent, spanning 30 meters. It was extremely condensed, and it fell like the Milky Way, as if it wanted to split the world apart. Under such an attack, Lu Fei, the woman in black, and the rest trembled. Die! However, Yi Chen threw an extremely simple punch. The golden wind from the punch surged, the rays of light blazed, and the sound shook the sky. Oh no! At that moment, Situ Han's ferocious expression suddenly changed. He felt all the hairs on his body stand on end from this punch. He subconsciously wanted to dodge, and his figure disappeared again, hiding in the night. However, Yi Chen's fist landed on him accurately. His entire body was smashed into pieces by the punch. Yi Chen killed Sidu Han, the #1 war criminal of Liang State. How is this possible? Seeing this scene, everyone's expression changed drastically, and extreme shock arose in their hearts. Situ Han's battle prowess is enough to rank in the top 5 of the major sects, but he was still killed in an instant. Who was this person? Before they could react, Yi Chen took another step forward. As he landed on the ground, he looked up at Chou Jinan, the bodyguard of King Chu on his left, and said softly, "Die." Meeting his gaze, the latter's heart suddenly trembled for some reason. Then, he felt a bone-piercing sense of danger. Then, a scene that terrified him appeared. He discovered that there was an incomparably terrifying pressure surrounding his body. It felt as if an invisible force was squeezing his body from all directions. No, his throat squirmed as if he wanted to roar. Bang! In the blink of an eye, his body exploded in an extremely strange manner, as if he had exploded from the pressure of the surrounding void cracks. King Chu's bodyguard, Chou Jinan, was dead. Swoosh, swoosh. At that moment, the remaining 2 people tore through the air and left without saying a word. They had no intention of continuing the battle. Damn it! Where did this malefic come from? How can he be so freakish? When did such a powerful person appear in our sect? The 2 of them were completely scared out of their wits. Yi Chen took another step forward and extended his hand. It covered a radius of 3,000 meters, as if it was pressing down on the entire world. Get lost! The Ghost King's subordinate, the overlord of power, roared. He punched through the sky as if he wanted to shatter Yi Chen's cage. However, all of this was in vain. Yi Chen slapped and turned into dust. Don't kill me. I'm willing to surrender. Only King Yang's younger brother, Lu Xuanba, trembled a few times. He stopped his tracks and knelt heavily before Yi Chen. Before he could finish speaking, Yi Chen grabbed him with his big hand, and his voice stopped abruptly. When Yi Chen let go, what was left in the air was a bloody mist. The wind blew, blowing the stench of blood in all directions. At that moment, the world was dead silent. Everyone was shocked. Those were 5 supreme martial masters. Losing any one of them would be a great loss, but now, all 5 of them were dead. Killing one person with one step. This is truly killing one person with one step. It's terrifying. Oh my God, that's a martial master, but he killed them as easily as killing chickens. Who exactly is this person? Why does he have such terrifying battle prowess? Could it be that the luck of the royal family is still there? None of the onlookers were not shocked. Yi Chen's power was truly beyond their imagination. The most unbelievable ones were Lu Fei and the rest. Senior Yi is actually so powerful. Lu Fei was so excited that she could barely speak. When she first met Yi Chun, he killed the pseudo-emperor stage demon wolf. She thought that Yi Chun was a pseudo-emperor stage body cultivator. Although she was grateful to Yi Chun, she felt that it was a pity that Yi Chun was a body cultivator. However, when Langyi County was in danger, it was Yi Chun who killed several martial emperors and a martial ancestor. Even so, she still felt that it was almost impossible for Yi Chun to fight the 5 martial masters with his strength at the martial master level. However, the truth was right before her eyes. How could she not be shocked? The lady in black looked at Yi Chun's back in a daze and mumbled, "Could this person be sent by the late emperor to protect our sect?" Even though she had grown up in the palace and experienced all sorts of palace struggles, she had never been as emotional as she was today. At that moment, Yi Chun lifted his eyes slowly and looked at the crowd in the distance. He said calmly, "Is there anyone else who dares to stand in my way?" The world fell silent. No one spoke. No one dared to look him in the eye. What a joke. He had killed 5 martial masters consecutively. He killed one person with each step as if he was killing chickens. Even if there were martial masters among them, they would not be so stupid. This person must be a martial king. Some of the experts gasped and said. Seeing that no one dared to speak, Yi Chun retracted his gaze and said to Lu Fei and the rest, "Let's go." Oh. Lu Fei seemed to have woken up from a dream. She pulled the lady in black forward and followed closely behind him. This time, the boulder in their hearts was completely relieved because Yi Chun had proven himself with his strength. The lady in black looked at Yi Chun's back quietly and sighed secretly. If only this person was a member of the royal family. Everyone envied her, the Empress Dowager, but who knew that she would rather live a peaceful life, staying away from politics and battles. Boom, boom, boom. At that moment, the ground started to shake violently, as if thousands of troops were galloping toward them. Chapter 1081. Rumble. The ground shook more and more violently, and a long cloud of dust rose in the distance. It was like a huge dragon nesting within a radius of 3,000 meters. They're moving. The 100,000 army is moving. Shuang, who was following behind Yi Chun, had an extremely sharp voice. Lu Fei and the lady in black turned pale when they heard that. They then looked at Yi Chun nervously. Even though Yi Chun had killed 5 martial ancestors consecutively, they had overlooked a problem. However, they had overlooked a problem, and that was that the 8 kings' army of 100,000 was still eyeing them from afar. There were 100,000 of them. Even a city would be flattened in an instant, let alone Yi Chun, who was alone. Dong, dong, dong. The dull sound of war drums rang out in this part of the world. Then, everyone saw an endless number of soldiers and horses coming from all directions. Every step they took caused the ground to tremble. They were like soul-reaping envoys, silent and breathless. Silence. The world was completely silent. Everyone was shocked. The world was filled with soldiers and horses, flags fluttering in the wind. Under the black masks, there was a strong, killing intent hidden. It almost caused the temperature in this area to suddenly drop. Yi Chun stopped in his tracks and lifted his eyes to look at the troops surrounding him. The coldness in his eyes was like ice that would not melt for 1,000 years. If anyone made an enemy of him, he would kill one. If 10,000 people made an enemy of him, he would slaughter 10,000 people. At this moment, the lady in black quickly walked forward and sized up the troops around her. She took a deep breath in and said, "I'm the Empress Dowager, Yin Yi. All of you are generals of my sect and have been worshipped by the imperial court for generations. Are you going to rebel now?" As soon as she finished speaking, Yi Chun could not help but glance at her. So her name was Yin Yi. An uproar broke out in the originally quiet army, and then there were waves of whispers. Obviously, most of the ordinary soldiers did not expect the Empress Dowager to be among them. They, who had been instilled with loyalty to the imperial court since they were young, were at a loss. Yi could not help but be delighted when she saw that. She said again, "Soldiers, I know that you have been deceived. As long as you retreat, I promise I won't pursue the matter. Don't listen to her." At this moment, There was a sudden roar that sounded like a clap of thunder exploding in the sky from within the huge army. The next moment, an armored man wielding a square sky halberd stepped forward from the camp on his horse. He pointed the halberd at Yun Yi and said, "This person is a rebel, not the current Empress Dowager. Impudent." Lu Fei's pretty face turned ashen. "Lu Qing, open your dog eyes wide and take a good look. The person standing in front of you right now is not the Empress Dowager. Who else could it be?" She then roared, "I am the daughter of King Langia of Langia County, Lu Fei, the current princess of Langia County. I can testify that the person beside me is indeed the Empress Dowager." The moment he said this, the army around him became restless once more. After all, King Langia still had a lot of prestige in the great sections. "Nonsense!" The man in armor shouted like thunder. "Who is the Empress Dowager? She had always stayed in the palace, so why would she show her face in public? You must not trust them easily. Everyone listen to my command. Get ready." He raised his hand. Swish, swish, swish. At that moment, many soldiers placed their bows on their bowstrings and aimed at Yi Chun and the rest. Lu Fei and the rest were in despair when they saw that. Even if they were Steel City towers, they would be shot into sieves if they were shot at the same time. "It's over." Shuang smiled bitterly and said, "Empress Dowager, I'm useless. I can't protect you." "Ready." The man in armor smirked coldly. He glared at Yi Chun coldly. "Fire!" Swish, swish, swish. In an instant, 10,000 arrows were fired at the same time. They covered Yi Chun and the rest like a black torrent. In such a battle between 10,000 people, for safety's sake, the archers were usually in the first row. Therefore, there were only 20,000 arrows fired in the first round. Even so, it was still hopeless. "You're courting death." Yi Chun's eyes turned cold. He then took a step forward and soared into the sky directly. In the blink of an eye, his divine consciousness spread out crazily. He crossed his arms in a circle, divine fist created in 33 days. Yin Yang Wheel. Under everyone's shocked gazes, a huge vortex suddenly appeared above Yi Chun's head. A gigantic vortex suddenly appeared above Yi Chun's head. The vortex was like the mouth of a ferocious beast, emitting an endless tearing force. At the next moment, the arrows in the sky changed their trajectories and shot into the vortex at the same time. The vortex also disappeared, and the sky was once again clear and bright. Lu Fei and the rest, who had fallen into despair earlier, were all stunned at this moment. The world suddenly fell into a deathly silence. Countless people stared wide-eyed at this scene as if they had seen a ghost, especially the 100,000 soldiers. Was this even possible? How is this possible? The man in armor from before could not believe it. Demonic technique. This must be demonic technique. Fire the arrows. Fire the arrows. He roared repeatedly. Swish, swish, swish. Soon after, a second row of archers stepped out from the army from all directions, replacing the first row of people. Just when they were about to shoot. Roar. Yi Chun inhaled hard and opened his mouth to let out a long howl. A deafening dragon roar came from heaven and earth. Countless golden dragon-shaped sound waves leaped into the army. Bang, bang, bang. Countless figures fell to the ground under the sound waves, and there was a series of tremors in the crowd. Bleck. Under the sound waves, the man in armor felt like his eardrums were about to be torn apart. He spat a mouthful of blood and said in shock, "Fire! Fire!" Boom! Yi Chun took a step out and turned into a golden gleam that shot into the sky as he charged at him. A bolt of purple lightning tore through the air. The true martial thousand lightning sword was unleashed. "You want to kill me with a mere 100,000 troops?" Yi Chun held the true martial thousand lightning sword and slashed forward. Boom! Heaven and earth rumbled as the sword gleam soared into the sky and enveloped the world. It was like the first ray of light that appeared when the world was first created. As the sword gleam landed in the crowd, there was a shocking rumble accompanied by screams. The entire ground had fallen into purgatory on earth. When the storm dissipated, what greeted their eyes was chilling and unforgettable. It was a huge ravine that extended outwards like a 1,000-meter-tall mountain. Around the huge ravine were densely packed corpses. These corpses were incomplete, and it was a ghastly sight. There were at least tens of thousands of people. Over 10,000 were killed with a single strike. Everyone was shocked. Was he still human? It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was possessed by the ancient god of war, right? Give me your life. Yichen glanced at the dumbfounded man in armor. He moved and dashed toward him directly. End of this chapter. Chapter 1082. Stop him. Stop him. The other party was shocked when he saw that, and he hid in the middle army camp without saying a word. Kill. Countless people charged at Yichen fearlessly. Get lost. Yichen stomped his foot on the ground, causing the entire ground to shake violently. The crowd that was charging at him fell to the ground. He did not slow down as he charged toward the armored man hiding in the middle army camp step by step. Protect me! Protect me! The other party shouted. Countless people charged at him again. Hundreds of people died at Yichen's hands with every step he took. His white hair danced wildly, and his gaze was as scary as a knife. It could be said that the scene had turned into a sea of blood and a mountain of corpses. Blood flowed like a river, and the pungent smell of blood was suffocating. He defeated an army of 10,000 alone. He's too terrifying. Is this person still human? Everyone was so shocked that they couldn't say a word. Boom! After Yichen charged into the middle army camp and killed thousands of people, the armored man wanted to run without saying a word. Die! Yichen grabbed the ground, and a halberd flew up directly. Subsequently, it charged at the former. Many people tried to stop him. However, the halberd pierced through his body and shot at the armored man like a bunch of grasshoppers. No! The other party roared unwillingly. Boom! The halberd pierced through him directly, and its momentum did not decrease. It crossed a distance of 3,000 meters and was finally nailed to a mountain peak. Dead silence. The world was dead silent. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the slightly skinny figure who was carrying a little girl in his arms. Under the protection of so many people, their general was killed by Yichen forcefully. Mr. Lu Feng was stunned on the spot. He felt his mind rumble. T2 powerful. The woman in black, Yin Yi, was surprised and delighted. She immediately shouted, "Those who surrender will not be killed. Those who surrender will not be killed." Shuang also reacted and roared at the top of his lungs. He was so excited that he almost fainted. Victory! They had won. Yichen broke through the army alone and killed the enemy's general among so many troops. There was nothing more shocking than this. Bang, bang, bang. The tens of thousands of soldiers who had long been scared out of their wits threw down the weapons in their hands and knelt on the ground. Plop! Thump! In the end, the black mass of people all knelt on the ground, without exception. I know that all of you have been deceived by the 8 kings, which is why you have been disrespectful to me. Yun Yi looked around, striking while the iron was hot. But now that Lu Qing is dead, all of you should rein in your horses before it's too late, and help AI Jia eliminate the country's traitors to atone for your crimes. Even though her voice was slightly weak, it was extremely clear, and it resounded through the heavens and the earth without missing a single word. As her voice fell, then someone said in a trembling voice, "Long live the Empress Dowager! Long live His Majesty!" Boom, boom, boom! Long live the Empress Dowager! Long live His Majesty! A low and deep thunderous roar resounded from the sea of people that continued to rise and fall. Yun Yi felt a lump in her throat and was about to cry. Then, she lifted her head to look at Yichen, who was far away. It was him. He helped me resolve this fatal situation. Otherwise, I would have died in this chaotic army today. Shueting reminded her at the right time. Empress Dowager, there's no time to lose. We should hurry back to the capital to avoid any accidents. Although Yichen had broken through the army, no one could guarantee that the 8 kings would not send reinforcements. Although Yichen was extremely brave, he would exhaust his strength sooner or later. Once they were surrounded again, it would be very difficult for them to survive. All right. Yuni took a deep breath in and calmed herself down before saying, "Generals, listen up. Protect me back to the capital." Following that, Lu Fei volunteered to gather the tens of thousands of troops. After all, she was the daughter of Langhe County. She had been nurtured by the art of war since she was young, and she had personally led troops when she grew up. The tens of thousands of remnant troops were very cooperative under her command. They surrounded Yi Chun and Yun Yi and rushed toward Longjing. None of the onlookers dared to stop them. Yi Chun's invincibility had completely shocked them. Even though they had the orders of the 8 kings, no one dared to attack. Sect leader, are we just going to let them go? A disciple of a sword sect looked at the green-robed old man in front of him and said unwillingly, "Apart from that, do we have any other choice?" The green-robed old man smiled bitterly. He killed 5 martial masters in a row and defeated 10,000 troops by himself. He must be a martial king. If we attack, we will only die. But the 8 kings, a hint of respect flashed through that person's eyes. The green-robed old man sighed softly, passed down the order. "Run for your lives. With this person here, our sect will not fall into chaos." The 8 kings will also fail on the verge of success. The sky was completely bright. In the central camp, Yi Chun sat on the carriage while holding a spirit stone in his hand to replenish the true origin energy in his body. Lu Fei, Yun Yi, Shui Ying, and the rest sat quietly at the side, not daring to make a sound, afraid that they would disturb him. After a while, Yi Chun opened his eyes slowly as the last spirit stone shattered. "Mr. Yi, are you all right?" Almost at that moment, the 3 of them spoke at the same time. "I'm fine." Yi Chun shook his head lightly. He looked at his daughter who was in Yun Yi's arms and said, "How long until we get to the capital?" Yun Yi immediately bowed and said, "Mr. Yi, we've already passed the Wangjing River. We're less than 20 kilometers away. I fulfilled my promise." Yi Chun looked at her and said expressionlessly, "I hope you can fulfill your promise when you return to the capital." At this point, his tone was a little cold. "Of course, you can go back on your word. However, your great dynasty will no longer exist. I can save you or kill you." Yun Yi's heart tightened when she heard that. She shook her head immediately and said, "Mr. Yi has done me and the imperial court a great favor. If I go back on my word, how am I different from an animal?" Yi Chun nodded. At that moment, the carriage suddenly stopped. A general's voice came from outside. "Empress Dowager, Commander Ma is here to welcome you." "Where is he?" Yun Yi said seriously. The man said, "He's at Chongning Tai, 5 kilometers away." "All right, you may leave now." Yun Yi's eyelashes trembled slightly. Then, she suddenly said to Lu Fei and Shui Ying who were next to her, "Both of you may leave. I have something to say to Mr. Yi." Lu Fei did not dare to hesitate. Only Shui Ying felt that it would be inappropriate for the Empress Dowager to be alone with Yi Chun. However, he did not say anything in the end. After the 2 of them left, Yun Yi inhaled slightly. Yun Yi took a deep breath. Her phoenix eyes, hidden under the veil, were a little complicated. The commander of the Imperial Guards, Ma Yuan, was here. It meant that she was truly safe and would arrive at the palace in a moment. However, she suddenly felt a little reluctant. To be precise, she resisted. Once she returned to the palace, she would be the supreme Empress Dowager of the Great Dynasty. By then, no matter what she said or did, she would be supervised by everyone. End of this chapter. Chapter 1083. She could not help but look at Yi Chun quietly as she thought to this point. For some reason, she suddenly had the urge not to return to the palace. She just wanted to follow the carriage forever. She did not know where this thought came from. Perhaps it was because of the man before her. He had saved her and escorted her all the way. His figure had completely walked into the depths of her heart. Yi Chun sensed her gaze and secretly frowned. "Is there anything else?" Yun Yi did not say a word. A few seconds later, she raised her hand and slowly removed the veil on her face. Instantly, a breathtakingly beautiful face was completely exposed to the air. She lifted her eyes slightly and looked at Yi Chun. The latter's eyes were also dazed for a moment. It was a pair of indescribably beautiful eyes. It was as if all the clear blue waves in the world were condensed in them. Her skin was like jade, and her tall nose seemed to be carved from the most precious white marble. Her red lips were like the most delicate flower buds in time. She was beautiful without any worldly aura. She was noble and approachable. Seeming to have sensed the shock in his eyes, a bright redness swiftly rose on her pure white face. Yin lowered her head almost subconsciously. Ever since the court, she had been wearing a veil and had never revealed her true appearance to the outside world. However, there was an uncontrollable force in her heart that forced her to take the initiative to show Yi Chun the most beautiful scene of herself. She did not know why she was doing this. She even felt like a deer was running wild in her heart. Mr. Yi, my name is Yun Yi. I grew up in the Yale court since I was young. I have no parents. My identity was originally lowly. It was the late emperor who did not mind my sins and made me a concubine. Who would have thought that the late emperor would not marry me? That night, the late emperor passed away. Yun Yi opened her red lips and slowly told him about her background. I thought I would follow the ancient tradition and enter the imperial mausoleum to be buried with the late emperor. However, I was chosen by the Grand Master to be the Empress Dowager. I don't know anything about national affairs, but I have to intervene in politics on behalf of the new emperor. I only wanted to wait for the new emperor to come of age before living in seclusion in the temple and accompanying the ancient Buddha. However, I was involved in the undercurrent of the 8 kings. Yi Chun listened quietly and did not say anything. His expression was as calm as usual. After an unknown period of time, Shui Ying's voice came from outside. Empress Dowager, all the civil officials have arrived from a mile away. I understand. Yin Yi sighed softly and looked at Yi Chun slowly. I'll never forget what happened tonight for the rest of my life. I will remember Mr. Ye's great kindness in my heart. I will deal with it after returning to the palace. She put on her veil again after saying that. She took a deep breath in and got up to bow to Yi Chun in all seriousness. Then he turned around slowly. Tears flowed uncontrollably. Outside the carriage, hundreds of civil officials wearing official robes and holding ceremonial tablets knelt on the ground. Your subjects greet the Empress Dowager. Long live the Empress Dowager. Yin Yi's temperament was cold and indifferent. She once again regained her noble and proud expression. She raised her white hand and said, "Everyone, please rise." After the minister stood up, a man in purple armor took a few steps forward and knelt on one knee. This lowly one is late and has frightened the Empress Dowager. I deserve the death penalty. The commander of the Imperial Guards, Ma Yuanshuan, was a martial ancestor. He had worked hard to protect the capital for generations. General Ma, it's your duty to protect the capital. I can't leave you. What's the crime? Please rise. Yin Yi said indifferently. Ma Yuanshuan stood up and looked around. He hesitated and said, Empress Dowager, I heard that you were intercepted by the rebel army 500 kilometers away. There were as many as 100,000 of them. The moment that was said, the entire place was in an uproar. Disbelief appeared on the faces of many civil officials and the soldiers who came to welcome them. 100,000 rebel soldiers. With such power, they could even take down a dangerous pass. Under everyone's gaze, Yin Yi said slowly, there are indeed as many as 100,000 rebels. However, I was lucky enough to meet an extraordinary person. Under this person's escort, I defeated the tens of thousands of soldiers, killed the rebels, and arrived at the capital safely. What? There's actually such a powerful person in this world? Ma Yuanshuan was shocked. His expression changed as he said, May I ask if this person is here? Empress Dowager? The civil officials around them were also discussing. Yun Yi turned around slowly and looked at the carriage behind her. She said softly, Mr. A few seconds later, Yi Chun walked out of the carriage with his daughter in his arms. He lifted his eyes and looked at the people around him. Sir, you've done well in escorting the Empress Dowager. Please accept my bow. Ma Yuanshuan bowed to Yi Chun solemnly and said sincerely, May I know your name, and where are you from, sir? Although he said that, there was a hint of doubt in his eyes. After all, Yi Chun was too young. My name is Mad Southern Yi. Yi Chun said calmly. He had already thought about it. Since he wanted to find Su Yuhan and his parents, Why not let his name spread everywhere before he knew where they were? Whether it was Su Yuhan, his parents, Wu Shuang, or the patriarch, they were extremely familiar with the name Mad Southern Yi. So it's Mr. Yi. Ma. Yuan Shuan cupped his fists and said, "Please get on my war horse. We'll talk about everything after we enter the city." Not long after, the news of the Empress Dowager's return to the capital spread throughout the world. Along the way, Yi Chun had killed 5 supreme martial masters consecutively and defeated thousands of troops on his own. It was like a huge torrent that swept through the entire northern region. Mad Southern Ye's name shook the northern region. Have you guys heard? The Empress Dowager was attacked on her way back to the capital. Tisk, isn't the Empress Dowager in the palace? Why is she outside the capital? Who knows? However, I heard that the Empress Dowager's journey back to the capital was extremely dangerous. She was first chased by the 5 martial masters, then she was surrounded by 100,000 rebel troops. What happened after that? It was said that a man called Mad Southern Yi killed everyone in an invincible manner. He defeated 100,000 troops on his own and brought the Empress Dowager back to the capital safely. Such a scene had practically appeared on every street, including the major empires. Countless commoners were boasting about it. Moreover, this story was still being adapted and exaggerated by the storytellers in the various restaurants and brothels, spreading it far and wide. At the border of the major dynasties, at Tiger Xiong Pass, the hundreds of thousands of troops from the 2 countries were still facing each other. However, both sides were focused on the 2 men who were playing a game in the sky. At this moment, the chess game was like a dragon and a tiger fighting. The white was the tiger, and the black was the dragon. Slap. The military advisor of the Qing dynasty, Gu Jinxiu, placed a white piece and broke the black piece's dragon tail. Then he smiled faintly. "Brother Qi, you've lost." "Not necessarily." The old man in the Taoist robe seemed to have aged even more. However, he shook his head and smiled. With a trembling hand, he placed a piece on the dragon's head. Immediately, everything changed, and the chess game changed drastically. "You actually hid this move." Gu Jinxiu's expression darkened slightly. Then, he sneered and said, "Even though you won this game, your sect is lost." End of this chapter. Chapter 1084. Not necessarily. The old man still shook his head. At that moment, a huge crane suddenly flew over from the sky, heading straight for Gu Jinxiu. Gu Jinxiu waved his sleeve, and the crane suddenly turned into a scroll and landed in his hand. Blurg. After reading the information, Gu Jinxiu immediately spat a mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with shock. How is this possible? 5 supreme martial masters were killed. The 100,000-strong army was defeated. Mad Southern Yi. What a Mad Southern Yi. The latter's face twitched a few times before he looked at the old man in the Taoist robe. "Brother Qi, is this your hidden chess piece? How can I treat such an existence as a chess piece?" The old man in the Taoist robe smiled. "I'm just following the orders of the forces and the heavens." After saying that, he looked at Gu Jinxiu with a faint smile. "Are we still playing chess?" "Retreat." Gu Jinxiu's expression changed. He gave the order and left unwillingly. Daizhou was tens of thousands of kilometers away from Longjing. Useless, a bunch of useless people. That's 100,000 people. Even if 100,000 pigs stand still and let them kill them, it'll take them a month, right? A man in a dragon robe was smashing things in a house with a ferocious expression. Countless people knelt in front of him, not daring to move at all. After the commotion subsided, an old man stepped forward and said in a trembling voice, "The Empress Dowager has returned to the palace, and the news of us intercepting and killing has been spread. Now, the people are angry everywhere." The moment that was said, the man in the dragon robe immediately sneered, sent a message to the others. "We'll attack tonight." "Yes." Everyone was shocked. The man in the dragon robe turned around and looked at the sky. Coldness surged in his eyes. "I want the world to fall into chaos because of me." Night fell. The capital of the great dynasty, Longjing. In a luxurious mansion in the east of the city, Yi Chen set up a barrier and began to count his consumption and gains from Langye County after sending everyone away. Ever since he returned to the capital with Yun, Yi, and the rest, Yun, Yi had asked the young emperor to give him a mansion. This mansion covered an area of nearly 1,000 mu. It was the mansion of the former Minister of Revenue. However, the former Minister of Revenue was arrested for corruption, and the mansion had been empty until now. As the story of his trip spread, he became the topic of discussion for everyone in the great dynasties. As a result, in just half a day, the outside of the mansion was filled with people. Countless people handed over their name cards to see him. Among them, there was no lack of high-ranking officials, nobles, or righteous men of the Jianghu. There were even people who wanted to challenge him. However, the commotion only subsided after Yi Chun kicked an intruder out. This time, I obtained 500 spirit stones, and all of them are low-grade spirit stones. There are also countless exotic flowers and herbs, but their grades aren't high. Yi Chun secretly calculated the income of his trip. He did not expect that there would be a day when he would be so poor. Fortunately, Yun Yi has already returned to the palace. I believe that she will deliver what I want soon. He put all the things back, smiled in satisfaction, and was about to go into the house to see his daughter. The little girl had eaten a lot of low-grade medicinal pills recently. Perhaps it was because of the large amount that she was prone to drowsiness. Right at this moment, he suddenly stopped in his tracks and looked up at the courtyard. He said, "Since you're here, show yourself." At the next moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the courtyard. It was an old man in a purple Taoist robe. His figure was slightly hunched. A quasi-saint? Yi Chun's eyes flashed. He could sense the aura of a quasi-saint from the other party's body. This was also the first quasi-saint he had seen in the ancient desolate realm. When the old man was less than 10 steps away from him, he suddenly stopped and cupped his fists. State preceptor of the great dynasties, Qi Tiandao, greets fellow Yi. "You're the state preceptor of the great dynasties?" Yi Chun's eyes focused, and he said calmly, "Why are you looking for me so late at night?" "Fellow Yi, I've been waiting for you for a long time." A strange gleam flashed through the old man's eyes as he looked at Yi Chun. "Why are you waiting for me?" Yi Chun frowned. There was a hint of hostility in his eyes. He had never met the other party before, let alone had any friendship with him. "I know you have many questions. Let me explain later." As if sensing his wariness, the old man smiled faintly. Then, he waved his sleeve, and a storage bag landed in Yi Chun's hand. "Fellow Yi, there are 10,000 spirit stones in the bag. It's the surplus of the great dynasties for a year." Yi Chun reached out and took it. He probed it with his divine consciousness and found that there were exactly 10,000 spirit stones. The spiritual energy was much more abundant than the ones he had obtained before. "This is the first big gift from this old man to you." After seeing him accept it, the old man seemed to be relieved. Then, he flicked his finger and a golden token shot at Yi Chun. "Fellow Yi, this is my second gift to you. This is the wormhole teleportation token that connects the great dynasties to the other four hells." The old man said slowly. Yi Chun accepted it and looked at the former. "Fellow, you're here on the orders of the Empress Dowager, right?" Whether it was the spirit stones or the wormhole teleportation token, they were all promises that Yun Yi had made to Yi Chun earlier. Although he knew that the other party would not go back on his word, he did not expect it to be so efficient. "I still have a third gift to give you." The old man did not answer the question and said, "The Empress Dowager once said that you came out this time to look for your wife." "That's right," Yi Chun said. The old man said, "Do you have the 8 characters of birth?" Yi Chun frowned. As if sensing his displeasure, the old man said, "To tell you the truth, I know some divination. Perhaps I can help you find the whereabouts of your wife." Yi Chun's gaze at him finally changed. "The reason why you're so drained is because you've suffered a backlash from forcefully comprehending the heavenly secrets, right?" He had only recovered his golden core true essence. If he was at a close distance, he could completely deduce Su Yuhan's whereabouts. However, on the way here, he had secretly deduced it, but he could not deduce it at all. This meant that Su Yuhan was too far away from him. Moreover, the art of deduction also involved familiarity with the space he was in, such as the location of the 8 trigrams. Fella, you have a sharp eye. The old man smiled faintly. My master is a master of metaphysics. I've studied this all my life. I dare say that I'm #1 in the entire northern region. After hesitating for a while, Yi Chun eventually wrote Su Yuhan's 8 characters of birth in the air with his bare hands and handed it to him. After the old man took it, the piece of paper shattered and turned into countless light spots that rose into the sky. If one looked closely, they would realize that the light spots were actually glowing words. At the next moment, the old man stretched his hand and collected all the words in his palm. Then, he bit his middle finger and formed strange marks on his palm. Open my left, I to see yin and yang. Open my right, I to see the world. The 36 heavenly spirits above, the 72 earthly fiends below. Keep me alive, ghost path. He took a deep breath in and performed hand seals with both hands. P.S. Chapter 4 has been updated for today. End of this chapter. Chapter 1085. The night was dark, and in the quiet courtyard, Yi Chen's expression remained the same. He watched quietly as the Grand Preceptor, Qi Tiandao, cast a spell to deduce Su Yuhan's whereabouts. As the latter formed a hand seal with both hands, 2 balls of fire appeared in his eyes. The fire was blazing and seemed to be about to burst out. At that moment, the vitality in the latter's body faded at a speed visible to the naked eye. More and more wrinkles appeared on his face, as if they were being absorbed by the flames in his eyes. Yi Chen's expression changed slightly. He did not expect the other party to be willing to burn his vitality for him. Just as he was about to stop him, he heard the latter say, "Fellow Yi, you don't have to worry about me. I don't have much time left, and I can die without regrets if I can help you with my broken body." With that, Qi Tiandao slowly closed his eyes. This spell was called the Reincarnation Dream Technique. It was a technique passed down by his master. Cultivators could only use it twice in their lives, and each time they used it, it would consume a lot of vitality and lifespan. The first time was after the death of the late emperor of the Grand Dynasty. He had used it to find a way out for the dynasty. Yi Chen's appearance had proven his divinity. The second time he used it was to help Yi Chun find Su Yuhan. As the vitality in his body dissipated, Qi Tiandao's consciousness was extremely clear. His mind was empty. Vaguely, he seemed to have seen the world through the chaos, the entire northern region, and even the other realms, such as the eastern wilderness, the southern region, the western desert, and the central state. However, to his disappointment, he could not find it. He could not find the person who deduced it at all. His body was trembling. His mind was aching. It was a sign that he had reached his limit. He roared furiously and forcefully held on to his consciousness, trying his best to find that person again. Suddenly, an eye appeared in his line of sight. The eye was originally closed, as if a person was asleep. However, at that moment, the eye suddenly opened and met his gaze. Just that one glance. Qi Tiandao's heart trembled violently. Blurg. He spat a mouthful of blood and staggered to the ground. His face was filled with shock. "Eye, forbidden eye?" Yi Chen took a step forward immediately and patted his shoulder. He channeled some spiritual energy into his body and said, "How is it? I saw an eye." Qi Tiandao took a deep breath and said in shock, "It's that eye that hid the secrets of heaven. It's it. It's it that blinded everything." "Eye." Yi Chen squinted. "That eye is too terrifying. It only glanced at me once, and I was almost scared out of my wits. Don't talk. Take this medicinal pill." Yi Chen flicked his finger, and a Qi Jing pill landed in his hand immediately. After Qi Tiandao swallowed it, he recovered a trace of vitality. Then, he looked at Yi Chen. "Fellow Yi, listen to my advice and give up." "Why?" Yi Chen asked. Qi Tiandao said with lingering fear, "I saw a great omen from it. I saw blood flowing like a river. If you continue to search, you will only harm yourself." Yi Chen remained expressionless. "What's the shape of that eye?" "It's like a ghost's eye floating between heaven and earth, empty and emotionless." Qi Tiandao tried his best to recall. Yi Chen's eyes turned cold when he heard that. He secretly scoffed. "Seems like someone used a great divinity to hide Yuhan's whereabouts." Thinking to this point, the killing intent in his heart that he had finally calmed down surged again. I don't care who you are. As long as you dare to touch my woman, I'll destroy you even if I have to go to heaven or hell. After saying that, he suppressed his killing intent and looked at Chi Tiandao. You've paid such a huge price for me. Do you have anything in mind? The latter coughed violently a few times before saying, I don't have anything in mind, but I want to find a pillar for the future of my sect. At this point, he sighed, I've protected the sect for 1,000 years. Before I die, the last thing I want to see is the sect destroyed after I leave. So, you're saying you want me to protect the dynasty? Yi Chen frowned and shook his head. If that's really the case, I can't do it. Why? Chi Tiandao smiled bitterly. I won't stay in the dynasty. Yi Chen said calmly, You know that I'm here to look for my wife. I'll leave once I find her. As soon as he said that, Chi Tiandao fell silent. After a while, he said, Fellow Yi, can you protect my dynasty for a year? As long as the time is up, the new emperor will become an adult. By then, he will have the ability to face things independently. He looked at Yi Chen pleadingly. Within a year, the sect won't restrict your freedom. You just need to be able to help at the most critical moment. A year? Yi Chen seemed to be hesitating. Upon seeing that, Chi Tiandao said again, Don't worry. Within a year, the dynasty will share half of the spirit stones with you. You'll be on equal footing with the new emperor. You can even use the power of the entire imperial court. 3 months. Yi Chen took a deep breath in and said calmly, I can only protect your dynasty for 3 months at most. During this period, I'll wish your sect the best. Fine, 3 months it is. Chi Tiandao sighed softly. Then, he stood up and bowed to Yi Chen solemnly. I'll be troubling you for the next 3 months. Fellow Yi, your life force has been exhausted, and your time has come. Yi Chen looked at him quietly. It seems like you've consumed the medicine in the life origin pill. I'm afraid you have less than half a month left to live. Previously, when he probed the other party's body with his spiritual power, he had a good understanding of the other party's condition. The essence longevity pill could only be used 3 times in a person's life. After that, it would no longer have any effect. The former had obviously done it more than 3 times. Half a month is enough, Chi Tiandao smiled calmly. With your promise, even if I die now, I won't have any regrets. His eyes were filled with relief. He had protected the sect for 1,000 years. In the past 1,000 years, he had never married a woman and had never left behind child. Even this disciple of his, Shuang, was only recently accepted. It could be said that before this, what he could not let go of the most was the sect. Now that Yi Chen had appeared, he saw hope for the sect's future. It could be considered as an explanation to the past emperors. At that moment, there was a commotion outside the residence where Yi Chen was. It seemed like someone was shouting. The two of them appeared on the huge street in a flash. They saw a horse galloping on the street. However, the horse's mouth was foaming. It was obvious that it was exhausted. Countless commoners gathered around. On the horse, a man lay weakly on the horse's back. His lips moved slightly as if he was trying to say something. Plop! The horse fell to the ground, panting heavily as it flung the man off its back. Chi Tiandao waved his sleeve and helped the man up. Then he asked what happened. Grand Preceptor, the man said intermittently. Rebellion. The 8 kings have rebelled. The 5 states and 13 counties have gathered 1,000,000 troops. They split into 5 groups and broke through 10 passes in a row, attacking the capital. End of this chapter. Chapter 1086. It was nighttime, the capital of a major dynasty, Longjing City. While most people were still in dreamland, an earth-shattering piece of news exploded in the capital like a heavy bomb. The 8 kings led by the acting king had rebelled. The acting king had rebelled in Daizhou. The ghost king had rebelled in Yuzhou. The Chu king had rebelled in Chuzhou. The Liang king had rebelled in Liang province. The Yong king had rebelled in Yongzhou. The king of Han, King Yi, King Lu, and the rest of the 8 kings had gathered millions of troops and threatened 5 states and 13 counties to rebel. The 1,000,000-strong army marched north and broke through 10 passes in just 4 hours. They were less than 1,000 miles away from Yindang Pass. Yindang Pass was known as the last barrier of a major dynasty. Once Yindang Pass was breached, the million-strong army would be able to march straight to Longjing City and attack the city. The news was like a thunderclap that swept through the entire dragon capital, completely waking everyone up from their dreams. That night, countless people were in a panic, in the palace of a major dynasty. Even though it was late at night, it was still brightly lit and the hall was crowded with people. What should we do? Are we going to forget about the major dynasty? Countless disheveled officials gathered in the hall. They didn't bother to tidy up their appearance and whisper to each other, their faces full of shock. The Empress Dowager has arrived with His Majesty. In such a chaotic situation, an old eunuch's voice rang out like a duck. The hall immediately quieted down. Everyone bowed subconsciously and turned to greet the outside of the hall. There, Yun Yi, dressed in a phoenix coronet, walked quickly with a young man in a dragon robe. Greetings, His Majesty, Empress Dowager. Everyone hurriedly kowtowed and saluted. You may rise. Yun Yi raised her hand slightly. Her expression was very calm, and no one could tell that she was nervous at all. After all the officials stood up, a civil official stood up and said, Empress Dowager, His Majesty, the 8 kings have rebelled, and there is an emergency from afar. Now that we are helpless, we hope that you can quickly make a judgment. As soon as these words came out, the originally quiet court became noisy again. Some shook their heads, some sighed. Silence. Yun Yi's eyes were dignified as he looked around. Even so, he could not suppress the panicked officials. At this moment, a cold voice rang out from outside the hall. The imperial tutor has arrived. The hall immediately quieted down. Then, Qi Tiandao, who was dressed in a Taoist robe, slowly walked into the hall with the help of someone. Your Majesty, Empress Dowager. Qi Tiandao did not care about his old body. After bowing, he sat down on the seat that had been arranged for him. Yun Yi could not suppress the anxiety in his heart and said, Imperial Advisor, what is the specific situation of the 8 Kings rebellion? How could she not know about the rebellion of the 8 Kings? But what she didn't expect was that the 8 Kings would rebel so quickly, almost not giving her any time to prepare. Empress Dowager. The state preceptor stood up and said, The 8 princes have raised their troops in 5 states and 13 counties at 3/4 of the night. The 8 princes have jointly issued an order to demand an apology from the Empress Dowager. It's a voluminous few thousand words, and they claim that after the late emperor passed away, it was the Empress Dowager who took control of the court and deceived the emperor. Therefore, they want to enter the capital to rescue the emperor. As soon as he finished speaking, the hall was in an uproar again. Yun Yi, who was sitting on the throne, had a slight change in expression. In order to find a legitimate reason for their rebellion, the 8 princes had slandered her and even wanted to suppress her. Qi Tiandao coughed heavily. After everyone had quieted down, he said, Now, the rebels have broken through 10 passes. They are less than 1,000 miles away from Yindang Pass. How is that possible? An official was shocked and said in disbelief, Even Chuzhou, which is the nearest city, is thousands of miles away from Longjing City. How could they break through 10 passes in less than 6 hours? That's right. Another official exclaimed in shock. You should know that the imperial court has already set up inspection envoys all over the country. How can these traitors be so efficient? Yes. Even if they grow wings, they can't cross thousands of miles in 4 hours, can they? The others nodded. In the face of everyone's doubts, Qi Tiandao smiled coldly and said, First, the inspector of Chuzhou, Liu Gaoyuan, was killed. His body was hung on the city wall. The inspector of Liang province was betrayed by his confidant. He was beheaded in public, and his entire family was killed. When the inspector of Yongzhou, Hong Qingxi, received the news, he led his confidant to try to kill the rebels. In the end, they were trampled to death by the rebels. Pingyang County. As he spoke, waves of shock rose in everyone's hearts. In just one night, many inspectors sent by the court had been killed. This could only mean that the 8 princes had planned this for a long time. That was why they were so ruthless. Sadly, many of them had never noticed it. Chi Tiandao took in everyone's expressions and said, the 8 princes split into 5 groups and headed north. Along the way, 7 passes surrendered at the first sign of trouble. The remaining 3 passes had their guards fight to the death until the last man. At the same time, the northern barbarians mobilized all 200,000 soldiers and cooperated with the 8 princes to cross the Longyuan River and plunder the cities of the major sects. Just 15 minutes ago, the enemy Qing Kingdom military advisor Gu Jinxiu split 500,000 soldiers into 3 groups and attacked the borders of the major sects. With each sentence he spoke, everyone's faces grew paler. In the end, the hall was filled with a thick sense of hopelessness. Just the 8 princes' million soldiers attacking cities and seizing strongholds was already terrifying enough. Now, there were 200,000 soldiers from the northern barbarians and 500,000 soldiers from the enemy country. The 3 added up to an army of 7 million. The imperial court of the major sects only had 800,000 registered soldiers at most. 800,000 against 7 million. With a power difference of 2 times, how could they fight? The entire hall was deathly silent. What? Are you afraid? Looking at the silent hall, a cold smile and sorrow flashed through the depths of Chi Tiandao's eyes. Other than using their mouths to fight for each other's interests and attacking each other, what else could these civil officials do when there was a war? If they were actually allowed to go onto the battlefield, they would probably change sides at any moment. Their so-called integrity and loyalty were nothing more than bullshit. Empress Dowager, why don't we move the capital? An official said hesitantly. Everyone else nodded. That's right. Once Yanang Pass is breached, Longjing City will be finished. Let's move the capital earlier. Yun Yi looked at the scene with a sorrowful expression. Bastard, Longjing is the foundation of our dynasty. How can we move the capital so easily? Moreover, the rebel army is still 2,000 miles away from us. A roar came from the crowd. Grand Chancellor Gu, who was only in his 90s, walked forward shakily. Grand Advisor, Empress Dowager, Your Majesty, I beg the court to issue an imperial edict. Gather all the people in the city and fight the rebel army to the death. Longjing still has 300,000 men who can fight. Yun Yi was moved. He looked at Chi Tiandao instinctively. Grand Advisor, however, Chi Tiandao shook his head slightly. This is not appropriate. Even if we gather 300,000 new soldiers, including the veterans, there are only 500,000. How can we fight against 1 million soldiers? Grand Advisor, don't tell me you have a better idea. Grand Chancellor Gu sneered. Chi Tiandao smiled. I'm willing to be the Empress Dowager and recommend someone for your majesty. With this person, we can fight against 1 million soldiers. Then, he turned around abruptly and bowed solemnly toward the outside of the hall. Fellow Yi, P.S. I have something to do today, so I can only write 2 chapters. Thank you for your understanding. End of this chapter. Chapter 1087. I'm willing to be the Empress Dowager and recommend someone for His Majesty. With this person here, he can stop 1 million soldiers. After Chi Tiandao finished speaking, the imperial court was silent. Everyone's faces were filled with disbelief. They even thought that they had heard wrongly, or had the Grand Preceptagon mad. One person could stop 1 million soldiers? Was he a god? Almost at that moment, all the officials in the hall, including the palace maids and eunuchs, turned to look outside the hall. There, a white-haired young man walked over slowly. The white-haired young man was holding a little girl around 5 or 6 years old. However, compared to the young man's calmness, the little girl was much more reserved. Her little hand held the young man's hand tightly, and with every step she took, she would look up at the hall timidly. The moment he saw the little girl, the eyes of the originally listless little emperor on the dragon throne lit up. Fellow Yi, Chi Tiandao bowed slightly. Yichen nodded lightly and lifted his eyes to look around. He saw many people looking at him with different expressions. Some of them were doubtful, some were disdainful, and most of them were suspicious. The quiet crowd also started to stir, as if they were discussing him. When his gaze landed on Yun Yi, who was sitting on the dragon throne. The latter's gaze met his. A few seconds later, the latter lowered her head in a panic. Impudent! At this moment, a shout suddenly came from the imperial court. It's fine if you don't kneel in the imperial court, but how dare you look directly at His Majesty and the Empress Dowager? The moment that was said, Qi Tiandao and Yun Yi frowned at the same time. They looked in the direction of the voice with gloomy expressions. An old man in the Ministry of Rites uniform stood out openly. He looked at Yi Chun coldly with an official's position. The Minister of Rites, Guayu. Minister Gua. Yuni looked unhappy. Yi Chun was her savior. Why did she have to bow to him? Just when she was about to shout at him, she saw Yi Chun raise his hand. The latter looked straight at Guayu. Are you talking to me? Of course I'm talking about you. Guayu scoffed coldly, his words sharp. This is the imperial court of our great dynasty, not a vegetable garden. How can you be so rude? The moment that was said, the rest of the ministers nodded. They then looked at Yi Chun mockingly. Qi Tiandao said that this person could stop 1,000,000 soldiers? In their opinion, it was pure fantasy. Since that was the case, why not test him? Seeing that everyone was approving of his actions, Guayu became more and more powerful. He suddenly shouted, Men, beat him out of here! As his voice fell, killing intent flashed in Yun, Yi, and Qi Tiandao's eyes. The next moment, the palace guards who were guarding outside stepped in as if they were going to take Yi Chun out. Wait! At that moment, Yun Yi suddenly spoke from the dragon throne. Empress Dowager, Gui was about to speak. However, Yun Yi coldly said, Minister Gua, do you know your crime? Gui was stunned. Yun Yi coldly said, Mr. Yi is AI Jia's savior, and secondly, he is not a citizen of my great dynasty. What obligation does he have to report to AI Jia and His Majesty? Yes, Mother is right. The little emperor was clapping, but he had his eyes on Meng Meng, who was next to Yi Chun. His eyes were filled with intimacy. However, the little girl made a face at him. Empress Dowager, but Guiyu hesitated. Treating AI Jia's savior like this is equivalent to looking down on me. Yun Yi was extremely dignified. Mr. Yi is also the Grandmaster's guest. Being rude to him is equivalent to looking down on the Grandmaster. At this point, she frowned and shouted, Men, take Minister Gua down. Strip him of all his official positions and imprison him in the Supreme Court. As soon as that was said, Guayu almost fainted. Spare me. Empress Dowager, spare me, Grandmaster. I didn't mean to offend you. He had underestimated Yi Chun's influence and how much Yun Yi and Qi Tiandao valued Yi Chun. However, no matter how much he cried, Yun Yi and Qi Tiandao turned a blind eye to him. Then, the court guards outside took off his official robe on the spot and forcefully took him away. After that, the imperial court fell silent. No one dared to speak anymore. However, they looked at Yi Chun with fear in their eyes. The Empress Dowager was no longer as weak as before. She suddenly became extremely powerful, causing them to be unable to react for a moment. Someone subconsciously wanted to stand up and plead for Guayu, but he was stopped by his colleagues who were close to him. Only then did he suddenly come to a realization. Regarding the Empress Dowager's decision, the Grandmaster had acquiesced from the beginning to the end. Whoever stood up to object would be making an enemy of the Grandmaster, and the outcome could be imagined. Since the founding of the major dynasties, the Grandmaster's status was supreme. Even the Emperor had to be courteous to him, let alone the ministers. Thinking to this point, he could not help but break out in cold sweat. Someone, give Mr. Yi a seat. Yun Yi waved her hand lightly. Give him the 8 glazed golden throne. As her voice fell, the imperial court was in an uproar. The major dynasties respected glaze, and the quality of the glaze represented one's status. Even the Grandmaster only had the 9 glazed golden throne. Meanwhile, the Empress Dowager gave Yi Chun the 8 glazed golden throne. What did that mean? Not long after, several people respectfully carried a golden glazed throne into the hall. Yi Chun sat down calmly. This caused countless people to be extremely envious. Qi Tiandao suddenly knelt down heavily to Yun Yi and said slowly, Empress Dowager, Your Majesty, I request for Mr. Yi to be conferred the title of King, General of the South. As soon as he said that, whoosh, the imperial court was in an uproar. Everyone was astounded by this revelation. King of the South, General of the South. Such a title had never been conferred in the major dynasties. It could be said to be shocking. Even Yi Chun was shocked. Yun Yi nodded lightly. Just when she was about to agree, a voice of objection came from the imperial court. I don't agree. But Prime Minister Gu Yifu stood up on the spot. Your Majesty, Empress Dowager. Gu Yifu knelt down heavily. Even though Mr. Yi has done a favor for our sect, we can't accept such a title. Etiquette can't be abolished, and this precedent can't be set. We beg the Empress Dowager to take back the decree. In an instant, countless ministers knelt down. Yin Yi's expression changed. Qi Tiandao's gaze was dignified. Why? Are you guys trying to force me to abdicate? Imperial tutor, it's not that we want to force you to abdicate. Gu Yifu lifted his head with a determined look on his face. Mr. Yi isn't a member of our Dazhong dynasty. Once he's in power, as long as he has a selfish motive, he can cause our Dazhong dynasty to fall into eternal damnation. That's right. Most importantly, this person's identity is unknown and his background is unknown. What if he's a spy sent by the enemy kingdom? Someone echoed. Qi Tiandao's expression was grim. Just when he was about to speak, Yi Chun, who had been silent, said, Since you guys don't believe me, I don't have the obligation to interfere with your dynasty's matters. Lastly, don't come and beg me anymore. After saying that, he carried his daughter and left. End of this chapter.